Explained by the Billy Meyer Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Time travel, or interdimensional travel, or intergalactic travel, or interuniversal travel Part 2. Contact Report 142. The few human races in the area of the Cassiopeia constellation in another space-time configuration are well known to us, but they have no resemblance to the life forms mentioned in this letter. Among these facts is the further complication that both of these races of human life forms exist in a different time plane in relation to the Earth. Like I said, so separated from the time plane that is known to the Earth human being and in which they live. So when the human beings of the Cassiopeia constellation one day master space travel, they still will not be able for a long time to penetrate into the time plane in which the Earth humans live their existence.
And in our time plane known to us, no human life forms exist, who would be capable of spaceflight in Cassiopeia, that is to say, in that area?
Sure, there are human beings there, but these are not yet advanced in spaceflight, or are not yet so far advanced that they could carry out journeys through universal space. To these facts, there is still to add that many of the space-traveling races that come to the Earth are not resident in the time plane known to the Earth humans.
We already spoke very often about space-traveling human races that do not belong to you, and which come, nevertheless, to the Earth. In which time plane do they all belong?
It is different for each. To mention all of them would be difficult and time-consuming.
Then let's say, for example, the humans of the area of Alpha Centauri, then Reticuli, or whatever it is, then...
The first ones live a tiny fraction of a second shifted from the Earth time plane, so therefore they cannot be reached by Earth inhabitants before they master time travel. The second human race you mentioned also does not live in the same time plane as the Earth humans.
Yes, recently I had a video rental. Its title was The Final Countdown. The story goes that an American aircraft carrier was driven by a magnetic storm into a dimension gate and was hurled from the year 1980 into the year 1941. Then, by an accident so to speak, a crew member of the ship stayed behind in 1941, while the aircraft carrier returned to the year 1980 again by a new magnetic storm and by the dimension gate. Now, in the film, the left-behind crew member, who was approximately 30 years old in 1980, logically lived on from the time of 1941. This seems to be rather logical to me according to my knowledge. Now, however, comes what can no longer be logically placed into reality. The crew member left behind in 1941 pursued the outlet of the aircraft carrier in 1980, and this man, who would have had to become 69 years old in the meantime, could see himself as he went about as an approximately 30-year-old crew member on the ship, which then transported him, via the magnetic storm, into the past. According to this story, he would have been left behind in the year 1941, and then would have witnessed his own birth in 1950, and then would have lived parallel with himself for 30 years, so once young and once old.
That is impossible.
Precisely, nevertheless, it is impossible if both want to live in the same time plane, both who are, nevertheless, only one person. The one staying in the past of 1941 would have had to die in 1949 at the latest, after which he would then have to be born again in 1950. This is so because the spirit form of the man is the same one at both times of his life, right?
That is very clearly explained. So it behaves in reality.
Well, such a coexistence of life would only be possible if two different dimensions existed.
That is right.
Good, then this case is clear. Then to the next one. Many people are of the view that they could do different things in the past and change the future if they had the opportunity for a journey into the past. But according to my knowledge, This is impossible because the future and the apparent present have already happened. That is, because the events of the future follow from the ones that already occurred in the past. Therefore, a man could not travel, for example, into the past to kill his own father or mother. He was begotten and born by a mother. Therefore, if a man returned to the past to kill his mother or his father still before his birth, then this past traveler could have never been born. Is this right?
Sure.
Good, so far so clear. Everything would be a paradox. And just to get around such a paradox, one would have to switch off the laws of space and time. So such a journey to the past can never take place in the way that the time-traveling person also actually arrives in the same material plane that exists in the past. And this also applies to the future. However, this also means that space and time are different in their expansion and in their speed in the past and in the future, which has the consequence for the time traveler that he penetrates into another dimension that is not handy for him materially. He could, indeed, live in this other dimension and exist if the living conditions there allowed it. But he could not enter into connection with the life forms there if he did not have special aids for this. He would remain virtually invisible to the life forms of the past or future, or he could be recognized at most as silhouettes. Am I properly oriented there?
Your explanation corresponds to the facts.
So this also means that with the events of the film, the final countdown, a certain logic does, indeed, play along with them, but in truth, the one staying in the past obviously could not have lived on in material form in the normal time plane. Even if he would have then skillfully died in, he only could have lived on in an invisible form or, at most, as silhouettes in the next possible time dimension during the time from 1941 to 1980, but not in material form, as this was given from 1941 to 1980 when the young man was born and was later launched with the ship into the past. Is this also right?
Surely.
Ah, now it starts to take form. Now, if people or machines and such travel into the past or the future, these are invisible there to the people or other life forms living there, although the time travelers can live there if they find suitable living conditions. This is in contrast to when people or machines simply penetrate into parallel times and, thus, into parallel dimensions, which are temporal and spatial and are thus exactly materially the same as the time plane from which the time travelers came. This is so, even if such another parallel dimension was created somewhat sooner or later than the one from which the time travelers came. It is just important that the spatial and temporal relationships are exactly the same, right?
Why do you always ask me if you have sufficient knowledge about this?
I just want to be sure. Well then, time travel into the past or future is always other dimensional than the past or future itself. Now, however, the possibility exists, as I know from Asket and from you and was also allowed to experience myself, that there are technical possibilities for one to make himself visible in the past or in the future, and to communicate with the life forms there. However, this can only happen if the matter of the time traveler is condensed by technological devices, or by consciousness forces to such an extent that the life form becomes visible as a body of energy, which one can pass through, however, because it remains in any case differently dimensioned. Did I say this right?
Surely.
So next, the aforementioned relates to time traveling with the aid of purely natural or technological processes, as they are known to human and other life forms, or will one day become known, according to their level of development. Time travels, therefore, offer no possibility at all for changing any events, which already happened in the present or future in the past. To these forms, however, there is still to be added that a time travel exists which comes about via pure consciousness-related forces and, by which means it is possible to materialize oneself in the past or in the future, but for help in each case, the matter of the past or of the future must be taken. Nevertheless, a life form only becomes strong in this ability if he or she is accordingly developed in his or her consciousness evolution, and lives out the necessary love for that purpose. This means that such a life form is no longer capable of committing illogical violence against the laws of nature. Thus, he or she never even enters into temptation anymore, if he or she travels to the past or to the future, to commit illogical violence, such as wanting to change the future through additional acts or deeds in the past. On the other hand, his or her logical understanding is already so highly evolved that he or she already recognizes and knows that nothing more can be changed in the past that would shape the future differently than what has already happened. For the future, from which the time traveler came, has already happened as an effect of the preceding causes. If now, however, a time traveler materializes in the past or in the future and meets himself or herself there, then this will also happen in the future if he or she came from there, because the spirit, that is to say, the spirit form of the time traveler from the future, also materializes in the past or in the future, depending on whether the trip leads from the future to the past or from the past to the future. This happened, for example, when I traveled with Asket into the past and then also into the future, and it also happened when I performed the experiment in Hinwil with the letters, which I then carried in the past, 2 days before the date of writing, to the post office.
That is all correctly explained. It is just that for the Earth humans, everything will be very confusing and incomprehensible.
I have already often experienced this because for normal-thinking human beings, these things seem to be confusing and crazy. I have also noticed this in each case when talk was made about time traveling, which I performed with you. Time and space are still inexplicable to the Earth human, even though everything is easy to understand.
That is understandable, because the Earth human still has no great knowledge about space and time. But on the other hand, you yourself have forgotten another important factor in your explanations, namely that time traveling can also be carried out in a materialized form in the past or future with technological assistance, just as we have demonstrated it to you.
I have not forgotten that, and on the other hand, I even spoke of it when I mentioned time traveling with the help of consciousness forces.
Sure, but that technological aids can become highly effective time-traveling missiles through the power of consciousness. You did not mention this.
Then that is also good. In regards to this, that was actually everything that I had to say about time traveling, except that now, I have the problem that we have talked too long, and nevertheless, I promise to be with my guests again in about 30 minutes. But now, 1.5 hours have passed, and somehow, I ought to be back again at the right time.
Then we will go back in time about 75 minutes.
That is enough. Then I can possibly go back into the kitchen again at 12:30 a.m.
Then now, position yourself here.
What is that?
You would say that it is a time transmitter.
There are all kinds of new stuff in this new ship. Can you explain this in a little more detail once?
Not today.
I agree with you, but I would still have a question now. When you restore me back to time in each case, this is, once more, another kind of time travel. But how this works, I have not yet found out with all my contemplating. It is only clear to me that this type of time travel has nothing to do with forms, of which we have spoken just now.
I will explain this to you once in detail, when everything is in place. But about this form of time travel, you may give no one information.
Contact Report 143.
The universe is divided into 7 units. That is to say, rings or belts that, entirely together, form the whole universe. And all of these rings are rotating against each other and have different diameters and an ovoid shape. These 7 rings, which we call belts, are the following: 1. Central core, 2. Ur-core belt, 3. Ur-space belt, 4. Solid-state matter universe belt, 5. Transformation belt, 6. Creation belt, and 7. Displacement belt. And we also call the creation belt the creation matter belt, or the expansion belt, and the displacement belt, the last and extreme, embodies, according to your sense, a bumper belt. Now, the solid-state universe is that part of the universe in which the new births exist, so the nascent stars, etc., with all their life forms. This real solid-state universe is calculated from the end of the creation core's outer wall up to the beginning of the outer wall of the transformation belt, which exhibits a half diameter of 7,969 octillion light-years and is thus the next largest belt after the creation belt. In addition, the outer wall of the transformation belt is where this belt collides with the inner wall of the real creation belt, also known as the expansion belt or creation matter belt. So this is that space which embodies the solid-state universe and is so called because in these three areas, the coarse material becomes existent and is existent, and the coarse material becomes existent in the transformation belt only by a transformation from remains of the penetrating creation belt, which are converted into coarse material from immaterial energy. This is the real solid-state universe, which consists of the transformation belt, the universe belt, and the space belt. In addition, the transformation belt exhibits such a gigantic mass and is the next largest belt to the creation belt because it is responsible for ensuring that in the space created by the expansion belt, the transformation of fine material energies into coarse material takes place, and at the same time, time itself appears and becomes existent. Already in this transformation belt, time begins to run into the past, from which aging originates. This means that in this transformation belt, chronons begin to exist, then are aging and becoming tachyons and are representing the past. By the way, tachyons may be proven by the terrestrial scientists in a short time. At the same time, the speed also decreases from the transformation belt in an irregular manner, but in a certain half-life. The irregular decrease in speed, which amounts to 147 times the speed of light in its starting point and expansion point, comes about through mutually self-influencing and different time streams that have already changed in their speed.
Contact Report 146.
Today, I once again had all sorts of trouble in reaching you telepathically.
I was shielded in an intrablock.
Ah, accepted, even though I do not know what this devil's thing is again.
An intrablock is not a device, but rather a state between two dimensions.
You still see me, unfortunately, in futile non-understanding.
An intrablock is identical to a dematerialized state between two different dimensions, whereby the energy of the dematerialized body remains as an independent energy block in itself, without mixing with the surrounding energy.
Aha, now this is understandable. Apparently the whole thing is connected to time travel?
You are sometimes really unbeatable.
Contact Report 163.
Good, then I have a question regarding so-called UFOs, which are truly none at all. As I know from you, the so-called flying objects that are considered UFOs are often observed in the day as well as at night. At night, it is often observed that these so-called UFOs light up and are vibrant in their intensity, and also variable in color. On the one hand, you were able to make it understandable to me, with tangible evidence and through my personal observations, that these sometimes deal with bioorganic flying bodies that are truly other-dimensioned life forms that, as a rule, can be captured on infrared film and that penetrate from other dimensions into our dimension area in order to romp around here somehow in earthly airspace for playful and whimsical reasons. You also explained to me that these bioorganisms, charades, are completely harmless and that they always return back to their dimension. But on the other hand, You have also spoken of the fact that similar phenomena appear in terrestrial airspace, but these are purely terrestrial in origin.
Contact Report 174.
However, the aircraft of Giza's allies withdrew using a hyperleap procedure that is not recognizable to us, so we also could not detect any structural swinging waves, neither with the entry into hyperspace, nor with the exit of the craft from the same.
Contact Report 194.
This, at least until the year 2029, after which, presumably, we will then finally remove ourselves and will turn our attention to other tasks that are foreign to the Earth, with the assurance that we permanently withdraw ourselves into our time dimension and never again return to this space-time configuration.
Contact Report 202.
Svath said that at the turn of the century, respectively the millennium, genetic engineering, respectively genetic manipulation, would very strongly step into appearance again, as this was already the case a long time ago and was practiced here on Earth by extraterrestrials, as well as in a space-time configuration of Sirius that is shifted to our space-time configuration, when there, a large group of humans from the Enoch lineage became genetically manipulated by the Sirians.
Contact Report 207.
Today, I first have a question about your space-time configuration, which is practically another dimension, but which is equally directed to ours and therefore is equally material. Our universe is called the Dern universe. How is it with our dimension and your dimension? What do you call these?
We denote your dimension with the term Goran, while we call ours Cirrus.
Aha. And these two dimensions, respectively these two different space-time configurations, are materially identical in their buildup and existence.
That is of correctness.
But in contrast, you explained that the Earth's moon penetrated from your space-time configuration into ours and then into the Sol system, in which it allowed itself then to be captured by the Earth as a satellite.
The moon found its way out of our space-time configuration at an early time and penetrated into yours, after which it was held by the Earth by its force of attraction and orbits around the planet since that time, deviating more and more from the Earth, and it still influences the Earth's rotation today as it did at the very beginning, and thus creates a braking effect.
Contact Report 216.
Do you know of even other universes than the Dal universe and ours? With this, I do not just mean other dimensions or other space-time configurations in our Dern universe, but actually other universes, so foreign ones that do not belong to our two twin universes.
Actually, we have already concerned ourselves scientifically with foreign universes for a long time, but so far, we have not been able to gain any concrete insights that would enable us to penetrate into such universes. We have knowledge and proof of the existence of foreign universes, but it is still impossible for us to break them open. Therefore, we can presently only visit the Dern's sister universe, i.e. the Dern's twin universe, and, thus, the Dal universe.
Simya-se once explained to me, in response to one of my questions, that antimatter is real and that this was already discovered by your ancestors more than 50,000 years ago and has been used by you since that time as beamship propulsion. Since then, have you researched and developed new techniques for this?
Of course, negative matter, as we call antimatter, has already been used by us for 50 millennia for all sorts of purposes. And of course, so much other research was connected with it, and still is. Therefore, new insights will also constantly be won and will create new ones with which negative matter is brought to application or is used.
Contact Report 219.
The Sirius regions, from where the refugees broke out, were in a different space-time configuration, and the refugees settled in another space-time plane, simply in our space and our time, which was a foreign area to the Syrians, and which could not be found by them up to this day. For on the one hand, there are simply too many of the most diverse space-time configurations in the entire universe, and on the other hand, the Syrians did not have the Henoch technology of the space-time exchange. But now, two specific questions about this. First of all, do the distant descendants of the Syrians from their other space-time configuration, or from their other space-time plane, still presently search for the refugees of Henoch's line, whose most distant descendants are some of today's Earth humans? And secondly, are the distant descendants of these Syrians in a position today to penetrate into other space-time configurations?
But still, they also developed their technology further in every form. Consequently, they also became capable of changing from their space-time plane into another. Unfortunately, they also arrived into the possession of the technology that enables them to change into the most diverse space-time planes, so even into this one, in which the SOL system exists, which they have indeed found after centuries of searching. Unfortunately, we are not able to catch these extraterrestrial black men elements because they always vanish into a space-time plane whose coordinates we cannot detect and cannot register. For quite obviously, these serious renegades have a coordinate distorter or otherwise have a possibility to distort the coordinate data, whereby we cannot capture them and cannot get a hold of the offenders. We have to wait until they make a mistake, or until our scientists find a possibility to decipher their coordinates upon the disappearance of the renegades into another space-time plane.
Contact Report 220.
The electromagnetic spectrum. This comprises 7 main forms, and naturally also exhibits different high frequencies and wavelengths. The electromagnetic radiations, which are known to our earthly scientists, are called gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, light rays, infrared rays, microwaves, short waves, ultra-short waves, and radio waves. And to my knowledge, gamma rays exhibit the smallest wavelengths, and radio waves exhibit the largest. But now, you already told me some time ago that there are still other rays, and indeed, in addition to the radioactive radiation, also neutrino radiation, electron radiation, and also tachyon radiation. Most forms of radiation are, however, invisible. Is this right?
That is of correctness.
About the origin of the moon, which drifted many millions of years ago out of your space-time configuration into ours and was captured by the Earth.
Contact Report 222.
You are mistaken in reference to the fact that the home galaxy of Gilgamesh is unknown on Earth because it was already discovered in the year 1781 by an astronomer named Mechan. This is a somewhat oval spiral galaxy, which is simply called M94, NGC 4736, by the earthly astro-scientists, and which is seen about 20 million light-years away from the Earth.
In our space-time configuration?
That is of correctness.
Contact Report 224.
Simyase once said that there are sometimes very powerful convulsions in the universe that are released by black holes. What explanation lies behind this?
It concerns space-time convulsions, which we also call space-time quakes. These occur when two black holes collide and merge with one another.
You mean that when two black holes collide and merge with one another, then structural quakes will result in the levels of space and time, or even structural convulsions, if I understand that correctly.
That is of correctness.
Contact Report 225.
This possibility only exists in the material belt, which forms the visible universe with all its stars, etc., for this belt is the only one in which coarse material matter can develop.
And solely this material belt forms our visible and explorable universe. But still other time levels, and thus, other dimensioned universe levels are incorporated into this.
Contact Report 228.
The universe with all its galaxies is very sparsely populated with human life forms, which also includes all space and time-shifted dimensions, or all existing space-time structures. Overall, universally in your material space-time fabric, our scientists estimate that there should be about 6,000 to 7,000 billion actual human civilizations of high and low form.
Contact Report 512.
This universe with all its galaxies is very sparsely populated with human life forms, which also includes all space and time-shifted dimensions, respectively, all existing space-time continuums. Universe-wide in your material space-time continuum, our scientists estimate that about 6,000 to 7,000 human civilizations of high and low form probably exist.
Contact Report 236.
You also said when I asked about it once, that other dimensions couldn't be penetrated, and time traveling couldn't be carried out through black holes. Is this right as such?
Yes, your explanation is correct.
Contact Report 238.
Maybe Quetzal will do this trip with you because he wants to see you as well as my daughter Simyase. Until then, however, it may be possible for the two of you to travel with our latest achievement and get to my daughter, with our latest transport system, with a transmitter that has made it possible for us to reach any and even the farthest point in no decompression time, if there is a counter-equipment there, so a transmitter receiving station. Through different relay stations, we can reach any point in the universe. However, these relay stations are necessary because we do not yet have transmitters with unlimited range. Nevertheless, we do not need any time to get from one point to another, except for the time it takes to get from the receiving transmitter to the radiating transmitter and to program the new coordinates of the new target. But even this programming by station will soon be a thing of the past, and so will the switching from one transmitter to another, because soon it will be possible to program the final destination at the output transmitter, and the individual relay stations will automatically carry out the next programming together with the onward transmission, so that no more time is required for this either. Over the next 3 years, our scientists should be able to put into operation a transmitter apparatus that no longer requires relay stations, but has an unlimited range, and is designed in such a way that the transmitter can radiate a receiving transmitter to any and even the farthest target in the universe, where it materializes by a certain sequence of impulses and in which all goods and materials, forms of life, etc., radiated to it materialize. At present, however, a chain of relay stations is being created which itself extends into the DAL universe, making it possible to reach the DAL universe from ERA with a delay of only 14 minutes. To answer your question, however, I would like to explain to you that our ancestors discovered the principle of electron energy, which is present on all planets and stars as well as in all forms of life, as well as in inexhaustible form in the entire universe. We make use of these electron energies even today just as our early and later ancestors did, only that we make energy transformations, and are incomparably advanced in the use of these energies and their application, as well as in the technology required for them, than our ancestors were. Tachyon engines as well as ray engines and antimatter engines, and our newest means of transportation with transmitters are based on electron energy, which we have been using for many millennia in ever more perfected form. Also, the cosmic electromagnetic life energy, from which any form of life lives, is a product of the never-exhaustible electron energy of the universe. Also, any form of existence, no matter what kind, lives from it, even the spirit forms, even if their energy is infinitely finer.
Aren't electrons also vibrations?
That's right.
Aha. Then an electron impulse engine should actually operate in such a way that it finds a hold on the electrons in free space itself, at which it can repel itself and move by its own oscillations. A perfect perpetuum mobile, so to speak, if one knows the technology and is able to apply it. This also explains why your spacecraft never lack energy, neither in free space nor on a planet. Also, it dawns on me slowly that you can regulate and apply the redirection of light to make your flying machines invisible, but probably also the phenomenon that you can also fly in an air envelope with unlimited speed without being fried by a friction heat. Because if you protect your ships or other flying bodies with electron oscillations, with an electron oscillation mantle, so to speak, then no more the slightest friction can arise. Is that right, or am I right?
You amaze me as always.
Without a doubt, these Skrills are human beings, even if they are completely vicious, brutal, and bestial, and incredibly sex-hungry, males as well as females. The horror of these differently dimensioned beings is only that they are completely degenerate and capable of switching from their dimension to other dimensions, whereby they then attack and rape people in the other dimensions. It is a good thing that this does not happen very often, and that people of other dimensions, such as our dimension, can only clear and pave the way for these Skrills through psychological misconduct. By this I mean that these Skrills can only penetrate into other dimensions and work there if other humans of this dimension clear the way for them by self-destructively driving their psyche to malfunctions and thus psychically collapsing. I know that, but my question and speech doesn't really get that far, but it refers to the star system, which is shifted by a fraction of a second to our time and space. All the liars, swindlers, and deceivers as well as the sick and lunatics don't know what you call your star system. In order to make it clear to the Earth humans from where you come, we always said until now that you would come from the Pleiades, which is why we always spoke of this cluster of stars, also in reference to your home system, which is shifted to our space-time level. So your space-time structure is a fraction of a second shifted to ours, which means so much that on your Pleiades you are living in a completely different space-time structure than we are here in the Sol system, although you are materially aligned as we are here in our space-time structure. Now the actual question, is it possible that humans on Earth are so far evolutionary that they could break through the split-second space-time barrier between our and your space-time structure consciously, telepathically, or spirit telepathically, in order to maintain contact with humans or spirit forms, etc., from your space-time structure?
That applies with absolute certainty only in one case, and that is with you. Otherwise, no human or material life form lives on Earth that would be capable of such contacts through the space-time barrier. Almost 3 millennia will pass before the first humans on Earth will be able to do this.
Do you know if any of your people constantly, periodically or sporadically change from your space-time structure into our space-time structure to do any work or to maintain contact with people from Earth, whereby I don't mean you and all those who have to do with me or in relation to the mission, but whose number to know would be extremely interesting?
I can fully answer your question. In this or in your space-time structure, there are at the moment 16 persons each in a fixed cycle who are on Earth as mission-related and missionary representatives and who are exchanged in a fixed cycle. Otherwise, no people from our space-time structure come into your space and into your time. Consequently, never any contacts of any kind could be maintained by such persons.
Contact Report 241.
They other extraterrestrials who may one day make official contact with Earth will also not yet be able to grasp our dimension in which we live and exist. If the mentioned contacts actually take place, but what is really questionable for the next decades, then Earth humans will enter into connections and alliances with Earth strangers, into which we may interfere according to our laws in no case and under no circumstances. This means that we must then withdraw into our dimension and no longer be active on Earth.
Contact Report 244.
The planet Amitaban is in a system of our space-time structure, which we call Harkonnen and which belongs to our Federation.
Contact Report 246.
My task was to create a colony on an uninhabited planet called Cathan in the space area IDAM, known on Earth in this space-time structure as the Spiral Nebula NGC 2997, at a distance of 45 million light-years. I was also busy in the space area Nosir, where we also founded a new colony. This also happened on an uninhabited planet called Nasadan. The space region Nosir is a galaxy which is 16 million light-years away from the SOL system in this space-time structure, and which is referred to as M83 in earthly astronomy science. Andron has some tasks to fulfill on the planet Canadan.
So, and where is this planet speeding through the world's space, if you may ask?
About 161,000 light-years from Earth, in a system we call Naranka.
You are once again sparse with information. What is the galaxy called?
Sundajaris. It is known to earthly astronomical science in this space-time structure as the neighboring galaxy Magellanic Cloud.
Well, then I would like to know what your new travel and transport options are. How does this transmitter system work, and how long will it take to get it up and running?
Do you see this little device integrated into the chest of my clothes?
You mean this little matchbox-sized thing?
Yes.
It's hard to tell that from the clothes. Without my flashlight, I couldn't see it at all. It doesn't stand out at all.
This enables me to generate a transmitter gate by thought power, through which I can simply step through, after which I am already at my destination without any loss of time, even if this is billions of light-years away. More precisely, I have to concentrate my thoughts in such a way that they are picked up by the device and amplified in such a way that the resulting forces create the transmitter gate through which my transmission to the destination is made possible. The system is not yet fully operational and usable, but we are constantly experimenting with it by transporting objects, etc., in this way for testing purposes. The required target data are created by the personal knowledge of the destination, which is then mentally programmed by the device, whereupon the transmitter gate is created in the form that the destination appears as a gate into which one can directly enter and is immediately at the destination. If the destination is unknown to one in such a way that one knows it neither by picture information nor by a personal being there ever, then mathematical coordinates are sufficient, which one enters into the device by thought power, and which must be known to one naturally. If you like, I can give you a small demonstration of the possibility of such a transmitter gate. However, you must promise me that you will not let yourself be carried away by your indomitable thirst for adventure and that you will simply step into the gate, because it is not yet fully developed for human transmissions and can therefore still be dangerous. The danger is still that transmitted objects, etc., do not reach their destination, but disappear somewhere untraceable and not retrievable between the dimensions, and thus get lost.
Would it be possible for you to open the gate to Quetzal's house where the fountain is at the pond? Fantastic. 2 steps, and I would be on Quetzal's terrain on Era. Ah, look, Quetzal's Olrak passes. By the way, where did he get this little cattle from? And can't that suddenly enter the transmission gate and get lost here?
It's an animal that lives on Era. It can't get here, because the gate is only visible from here on the one hand, but not from the other side, and on the other hand, it can only be used from this side. This has been designed for safety reasons to prevent unwanted life forms from passing through the gate. If it were different, it would be very dangerous. On the other hand, the gate can only exist as long as it is thought to exist.
And how far is this gate visible here? I mean, if there's someone up there on the street looking over here. Can you see it then?
There is no danger because the transmission gate is only visible on a few steps. Go back only once 3 steps, then you won't see it anymore.
And is this technique of transport then the absolute ultimate for all time, or is a further development still possible?
The development only ends where the power of consciousness alone is sufficient to transport oneself and materials of all kinds by teleportation or telekinesis from a point of departure to a specific destination, without any technical aids being required. This also means that you do not need any spacecraft, etc., to move from one place to another, or to transport materials from one place to another. The next development, however, will be to find and use the means to move from one place to another without a transmission gate, and to do so solely by the power of thought, which is technically amplified in such a way that a teleportation can be carried out that can bridge billions of light years as well as the technology of transmitters that is now emerging. Nevertheless, even then the spacecraft will still be needed, which will also be further advanced in development.
And everything is based on the speed of creation, 107,000 times the speed of light. Even with the present transmitter gate, this cannot be any different.
That is not quite correct, because for the time being it is based only on 21,000 times the speed of light. Besides, the speed of the spirit should never be reachable by technical means.
The size of the gate is about 2 meters by 90 centimeters, and for a human the gate is just good in size. But what if a larger gate is needed, such as for large goods and the like?
The size of the transmitter gate can be customized according to your needs. This is done by a simple command, mentally directed to the gate generator device.
Fabulous. It really could not be simpler. But what happens now if somebody takes over the transmitter gate generating device without authorization? Is there perhaps a safety device as you use it with your weapon tools, that only the owner of the device can use it, because it is tuned to his thought frequency?
That's what you say. This alone guarantees the best possible security, so that no one can use the devices for unfair and nonsensical purposes without authorization, should they fall into unauthorized hands for any reason, if we are active on worlds whose people cannot yet be expected to use such devices.
Well, now you also have devices and the like, which look like a simple piece of metal or plastic, etc. Without these being recognizable as devices or apparatus, etc., but in which there is a high-quality, super-minial electronics, which again is not recognizable as such if you cut the metal or the plastic, because everything is poured into each other.
Contact Report 248.
I would gladly like to know how far you have progressed with the technology of the new transportation systems.
Everything has not yet advanced so far that our transportation systems would be useful for life forms, and thus for humans. Errors still appear that demand from us that we still perform tests with some materials that still frequently get lost during transport. They probably leave from the output location, respectively from the sending location, but they do not arrive at the destination.
Then they get lost somewhere in the dematerialized energetic state between the place of departure and the destination. They get lost, so to speak, between dimensions or in foreign dimensions, right?
That is right. But these facts shouldn't be so important for the Earth humans that we would still have to talk about them in more detail or subsequently, especially since it concerns those planets of Lyra that are beyond this space-time plane. No, it is not so simple to master, to leave the material universe, the material belt. Very great physical skills and experiences, as well as quite special technologies, are required for this, which are still completely unknown even to many advanced humanities, respectively civilizations, of many space-knowledgeable peoples of many worlds, as this is also the case with regard to a change of dimensions, as well as regarding time traveling.
Contact Report 249.
It is always doubted that Pleiadic spaceships can fly with umpteen times the speed of light in normal space, or that objects can only fly through space with approximately the speed of light without time shifts, because Einstein's theory of relativity simply forbids this. Is the assumption correct that the calculation formulas of this theory of relativity are basically correct, but only with limitations, so that they have to be replaced by other and further additions in the end? In my opinion, this should be the case, because if I consider that certain galaxies drift apart at approximately the speed of light, without time shifts arising, then it would have to be so for this reason alone, quite apart from my own experience, which I was allowed to experience and make through you during my great journey and during other occasions.
Your assumption is absolutely correct, but I am not allowed to give any official details about it and therefore no information.
Would it be possible to learn more about the origin and propagation of time streams in the universe?
I have to give you the same answer here as well.
This was also the case about 6 years ago with Kohan's people, on the planet in the Centauri area, which had 120 billion people and which is somewhat delayed to our time and space.
Contact Report 250.
I am referring to the fact that unidentified flying objects do not only come from our space-time continuum, but also from other dimensions.
If we consider a further form of terrestrial flying objects, which are considered UFOs and which are not of extraterrestrial origin, then we have to speak of those flying machines which originate from the terrestrial future in terms of their dimensions to the space-time continuum prevailing here. So we are dealing here with flying bodies of earthly origin, but built in a dimension of the future on Earth, whereby Earth humans living there in the future have found the ways of time travel, whereby it becomes possible for them to travel back into their own past and thus also into the present time on Earth. So these visitors are not extraterrestrial intelligences either, but also inhabitants of Earth, whose technology is many centuries and sometimes even thousands of years ahead of the present time of Earth humans and in the future. Further forms of unidentified flying bodies concern life forms that are actually extraterrestrial and that also belong to this space-time continuum prevailing here. Such life forms with their flying objects visit Earth only very rarely, except for 3 different races, which have been flying to Earth for a long time, apart from us Pleiadians, of course. Furthermore, Earth is also approached here and there by extraterrestrial human life forms, which happens, however, extremely rarely and is to be counted often in decades or in centuries, who come with their flying objects from parallel spaces and or from parallel planes to the space-time continuum predominant here, like for example we ourselves, who live in a parallel space which is shifted fractions of a second, attached to this space-time continuum predominant here.
Sorry to interrupt. On the one hand, you talked about Earthlings who live in the future and visit Earth from there. That's what you call time travelers.
Of course.
But what should we call those who simply come from parallel spaces?
According to your sense, we simply call it transfer or parallel transfer.
So nothing that would be complicated to say. But just go on with your explanations now. Does it actually happen frequently that people with their flying machines come to us from parallel spaces and come to Earth?
No, that's very rare, apart from us and our allies. In contrast, however, it is more common for bioorganic flying objects to appear in this space-time continuum, not only on Earth, but also on many other inhabited and uninhabitable world spheres. So we can observe such bioorganisms, as we call them, also on our worlds, whereby we do not know, however, yet exactly which kind these life forms are now. The dimension changers, as we also call them, are larger and smaller airworthy, bioorganic life forms, which are often fluorescent or very brightly radiating and located in a parallel space or parallel universe. In their way, they are absolutely harmless and even playful. They often appear individually or in smaller groups, ranging in size from a few meters to several hundred meters in diameter. They live in a parallel space that we have not yet been able to access, whose data we know well, but into which we have not yet been able to penetrate in form in order to establish communicative contact with these forms of life. It is about the same with the malicious skrills, with which we can hardly communicate, but which are not flying objects like the dimension changers, but which can only move on solid ground and live in a parallel space.
But may I ask a question about the name of what you call your system beyond our space-time continuum? Together, we always speak of the Pleiadians, by which we mean only the distant and punctual place from which you come, for instance, while you name your system differently in our time-shifted parallel space. Can we perhaps now speak openly about it and name the right name, which is almost identical to Pleiadians? Well then, I will now officially say that you call your star system Pleiaren, but you name the system's suns and the planets equally, as we call the stars of the Pleiades in our space-time continuum. But there is a question that relates to statements of Asket and Simyas. The two spoke in their time often of the fact that an atomic destruction of the Earth, etc., could create disasters that would affect other universes. Somehow, however, the worm seems to be in these statements, because I cannot imagine that other universes can be affected by a planetary destruction.
This is also true because such destructions have no influence on other universes if they are outside this creation universe. This is what you mean by the worm, which is apparently given in the statements of my daughter and of Asket. But the two spoke not of foreign creation universes, but of this universe's own universes, into which very well destructive effects are possible if planetary or galactic destructions take place.
Oh well, you mean that Simyase and Asket each spoke of parallel universes, and thus of other space-time continuums that are located in our creation universe.
Right.
Then all is well. The matter was simply unclear. So large format destructions in our material universe can also have a destructive effect on other space-time continuums or parallel universes. I did not know that. What happens there basically, or what can happen there?
The barriers between different dimensions are torn, whereby the destructive forces can spread into other dimensions or even into other universes or space-time continuums and act there.
Contact Report 251.
From Henok's primitive peoples, two lineages divided out, after the Great Reparations actions after the peace struggles by the peace troops were over, and all peoples and planets were pacified. One lineage went its long way to the Lyra regions, where they settled in a space-time continuum offset by a fraction of a second by another space-time continuum, where they lived from then on. But only after they had inhabited other worlds and systems in various other areas of foreign galaxies for many billions of years, as a result of which warfare then again developed. In this episode again, space-wide emigrations of peoples were carried out, which finally ended in another space-time continuum, which is shifted by a fraction of a second to our space-time continuum, whereby the area was located in the space of the Lyra stars. Which is why today one still speaks of the Lyra regions and of the old Lyrians, which then returned to later time again partly expeditionary and partly hasty into our space-time continuum, in whose consequence they came then also to Earth, in order to work here in known way, This lineage has retained the entire knowledge of their original origins to this day, and this lineage also gave rise to the Pleiadians respectively, the Pleiaren, who in their language call themselves the same as they call their celestial cluster beyond the Pleiades, which has also shifted a fraction of a second in relation to our space-time continuum in another space-time continuum. The populations of today's Sirius regions, which are located in space-time configuration offset to the earthly dimension. This retreat opened the way for the old Lyrians to Earth and to Earth humans, when these came out of their space-time continuum expedition, as well as escape moderate into our space-time continuum and into the Sol system and thus to Earth, in order to play themselves here with the time likewise as deities and to cause disaster. There comes a time when, with the weakening of the sun's nuclear fusions, enormous changes will take place in the Sol system. Not only will the entire gravitational field be out of control and change, but large-scale climate change will also be the order of the day. This is spurring scientists on to peak performance, because they want to counteract the negative effects of the sun, which, in contrast to erroneous scientific assumptions, appear much earlier over many millennia than previously assumed. Only now it is recognized correctly that the sun is a dying star, and thus the setting of the Sol system is already determined, even if the sun will continue to exist still approximately 4.140,000,000 years, however then already as dead star, which is swallowed then after this time by a black hole and is destroyed. So the scientists begin to perform at their best, and find the miscalculations underlying the pi number. By correcting and now correctly calculating the pi number, the scientists and the incredibly sophisticated technology will be able to harness unimaginable energies for Earth, by making it possible for them to derive energies from black holes in the wide area of the Milky Way, and make them usable for Earth. At this time, however, scientists will still not be able to reach the center of our galaxy to tap into the black hole there. However, this will not be necessary for the time being, because the surrounding objects for energy generation are completely sufficient to serve Earth. This new energy production, as well as the kind of the energy itself, make it possible from now on for the terrestrial human being to develop new space travel forms, in whose consequence and extension also that travel and transport factor becomes reality, which in the year 1995 and all time before, as well as still long time into the future, is called fantasy and impossible, that is to say, the time travel. This invention, in turn, enables man to travel into the past and the future, as well as into the vastness of the universe, which was previously impossible. In this consequence, it naturally cannot be missing that new human life forms are discovered. Extraterrestrials, from which Earth humans will learn very much and unimagined, and which are around uncommonly much more intelligent than the humans of Earth themselves. In the prophecies, predictions, and visions that have been made so far, it has probably been said that man on Earth will discover and invent time travel and break up the dimensions of the future and the past. However, it was not said that various other dimensions would be discovered and found, and that undreamt of possibilities would be opened up to man. However, there will also be many dangers associated with this, both physical and caused by intelligences of foreign dimensions. A third group left our universe, the Dern universe, and penetrated into the twin universe, into the Dal universe, where the people multiplied and united with many other peoples to form a huge federation, as it also happened with the Pleiadians Pleiaren, whose federation exists offset to our space-time continuum by a fraction of a second, and covers an area of about 70 million light-years in diameter, whereby also some few Federation members, respectively Federation planets, are located in our space-time continuum.
The film and photo material of UFOs made in all the years worldwide and especially in America and South America, as well as in England, etc., does not always show extraterrestrial flying objects, but also such strangely working flying machines, which are manufactured since several decades by terrestrial humans on Earth, as well as flying bodies, which come from the terrestrial future, or which are known as bioorganic flying bodies with us, which are the so-called dimension changers, life forms, which penetrate from another dimension into the terrestrial airspace.
Your world monitoring control discs, what about them? Do they remain stationed around the world?
All these control apparatuses have already been removed, so only the one intended for the center still exists. But it is no larger than 7 millimeters in diameter and 3.2 millimeters in thickness. The control apparatus also contains transmitters and receivers and associated image transmission equipment, which transmit everything at multiple speeds of light to a control point near our dimensional passage at a star far beyond the Pleiades cluster, in order to reach our space-time structure and thus our dimension from there through a dimensional transmitter.
You are once again silent tight. My friend, you mean probably that certain Earth visitors of other worlds outside of our solar system could get hold of your information and find the way into your dimension.
That is the meaning of my words, yes. At least from a group of such intelligences, we know that they are capable of changing dimensions in such a way that they could reach our dimension, which would be unpleasant.
Contact Report 252.
And now I have a question that has been on my mind for years. Other dimensions and other universes. Do the same physical laws apply in them as in our universe and in our dimension?
No, that's not the rule. The laws of physics are different in other dimensions and universes if they are not aligned to the Dern universe, that is to say, to our universe. There must therefore be a rectification of the nature of the universe and its age, as is the case, for example, with the Dal universe, which is known to embody a twin universe of the Dern universe. If the same laws of physics are to prevail in other dimensions or universes, then all their physical concerns must be aligned with those of our universe. Otherwise, other physical laws are given.
Then I now have a question that has preoccupied me for a long time. Why did practically all your ancestors choose solar systems and worlds to live in, which are in a different space-time continuum than we are here?
Extrasolar planetary systems and solar systems in this space-time continuum of the Dern universe can be found relatively few because they are extremely rare. In the dimension in which we and all the other Hinoch lineage groups live, on the other hand, there are many solar systems in which planets are also classified and which are also capable of carrying a variety of life. Already our earliest ancestors traveled the dimension time-shifted to this space-time continuum in which we live. Consequently, it is known to us and all Hinoch lineage groups since ancient times.
What does that mean in relation to planetary solar systems?
In this space-time continuum of our Dern universe, many planets probably exist in many solar systems, but they are extremely thinly arranged in relation to our dimension, if I may say so. This means that the many planetary solar systems lie very far apart in this galaxy, the Milky Way, while in our dimension and in our galaxy, many solar systems with planets lie very close to each other or are arranged more closely to each other.
So this is caused differently depending on the dimension?
Right. Because in every dimension of a universe, there are different prerequisites and often different physical laws, as I already explained to you.
Contact Report 254.
The Sun, Alcyone, in our space-time continuum have no planets. Therefore, no humans can live on them.
Contact Report 257.
One moment, please, before I forget. The aliens you mentioned, who are supposed to contact Earthlings in the near future, do they have any knowledge about you and your dimension?
No, in no way. They will have neither knowledge of our presence here, nor knowledge of our home dimension and our home worlds.
There actually are still enough cases of UFO observations that undoubtedly rest upon such really occurring extraterrestrial, and partly also other dimensional flying devices which have nothing to do with the Pleiadian Pleiaren and their confederates. Rather, they belong to other worlds and civilizations. Silence was maintained regarding what the UFOs effectively were, namely extraterrestrial and partly foreign dimensional interplanetary flying devices controlled by crews foreign to Earth. Well, here I have another question concerning the destroyer. Simya-se told me pretty much at the beginning of our contacts that the destroyer has been doing his mischief in our solar system since time immemorial and destroyed about 22 million years ago, or so old homeworlds of the Lyrans. To my knowledge, however, these lay in a different space-time structure, shifted by a fraction of a second to our space and time. How is it there that the destroyer came after the destruction work with the old Lyranern into our space-time structure?
The destroyer then broke through a space-time barrier created by the ancient Syrians, as we still use it today, but in a modernized form, as you would say. At that time, these passage or dimensional gates, as we call them, were constructed in such a way that they opened as soon as any object approached. This also happened as the destroyer approached, who through unfortunate circumstances came to one of these dimensional gates, shot through and entered this, your space-time continuum, then found his way into this solar system. Today this would no longer be possible, because our passage gates from one dimension to another, or to the Dal universe, have already been constructed and secured for several million years in such a way that they are probably constant in one place, but only open in response to very specific impulses emitted by our spacecraft. So today, it would no longer be possible for a world body to pass unintentionally through one of our many-dimensional gates. The development and construction of this fuse took place as an urgent need after the incident when the destroyer of our ancestors was unintentionally able to change from one space-time structure to another.
Contact Report 264.
The bioorganic flying objects. Can these life forms take on human form and in this form, for example, come into contact with terrestrial humans?
No, this possibility is not given to them. Nor are they of any human-like nature, but pure energy bodies capable of transformation and dimensional change, which appear as floating forms of light energy in one or the other dimension, are able to change their light intensity, but do not have any form of conscious consciousness.
Contact Report 265.
It's not that strange, because at least the group of these foreigners who were up to no good in the first few years, men in black, are prevented from appearing on the center grounds themselves by a reporting system we installed. However, if they were to try this, which was the case several times before, we would immediately take action against them, which they find extremely unpopular, so they disappear without a trace, without us being able to decipher their flight coordinates for their leap in time, because they are so cleverly coded and torn that we are not able to decipher them even with our best technical means, which is also the reason why we have not yet been able to put their evil handicraft to them, as you like to say.
Contact Report 269.
Then again a question. The unknown flying objects? The so-called UFOs, which are sighted more and more frequently in all countries, sometimes even in larger arrangements, and which are also sighted in larger numbers, all concern the same place of origin?
No, that is not the case, because there are several different places of origin from where the flying objects come. Besides, not all are at home in your space-time structure, because as we noticed, Earth is also visited by differently dimensioned flying objects and beings that do not come from your space-time structure.
Can one also speak of future visitors?
Yes, that is the case.
Contact Report 291 Asina. As usual, we are on an expedition. And since the Earth serves us well as a stopover to our next destination, we have moved into your time by a leap in time.
Uh-huh. I suspected something like that when I saw the lights in the sky. I assume that you jumped out of your dimension directly into our time, and we became aware of you just at the moment you were materialized. And I assume that this must have happened about 200 kilometers away from our center, somewhere in the north and over German territory.
Contact Report 296.
My area of responsibility lies in our own space-time structure, about 60 light-years beyond the Mech-Buddha region known on Earth, which is about 1550 light-years away from Earth.
Contact Report 297.
In the parallel dimensions, does time run parallel to our time? I do not mean the time that is determined by the human beings of the different dimensions, but the time that is determined by the universe and the time streams.
The purely universal time is uniform in all dimensions. Differences only appear in dimensions of the past or the future, and only in the form of a time shift to the present time.
Which means that in the past as well as in the future, universal time remains uniform, and only the time shift to the present is of significance.
Right.
Then a further question, which is obviously still unclear with different group members. To my knowledge and understanding, one must consider the terms dimension and space-time structure as a value. So dimension also means space-time structure, and space-time structure also means dimension. Am I right, or have I explained it wrong?
You know that your explanation is of correctness.
Contact Report 306.
Now, I would like to ask about what technology and energy source you actually use for your intergalactic and planetary communication. As I know, your technology is aligned in such a way that there is no loss of time during communication, not even when this is carried out across millions and billions of light years. Can you explain something about this to me, or is it all a secret?
We use the technology of negative speed, by what means a signal is already manifested at the destination through corresponding communication devices before the actual transmission or sending of the signal has even begun. Thus, the signal already reaches the goal upon input of the signal. The sending distance is unlimited and therefore extends throughout the whole universe. The energy sources, for which you ask, are actual signal carriers, by which everything is linked together throughout the whole universe and through which the cosmic communication of all things, all life, and all existence takes place. These energy sources are not detectable and are not at all usable without suitable and high-precision auxiliary apparatuses. For the human eye, they are completely invisible, and they have the capacity to penetrate any matter irresistibly. And when I say any matter, I mean it, for no matter or antimatter exists throughout the whole universe that could not be penetrated by these energy sources that travel billions of times faster than the speed of light with unimpeded speed. These faster-than-light energy sources are subneutrinos. Our technology allows us to equip these with signals, which also happens with billions of times the speed of light and has the effect that the signals spread like lightning throughout the whole universe and indeed indefinitely in all directions. In order then to catch the signals, special and highly sensitive sensors are necessary, through which the signals are then transmitted to an equalizer and deciphered.
Our science knows about neutrinos, however.
That's right. But I am not speaking of the neutrinos that are known to the earthly scientists, but of subneutrinos, concerning which the scientists of the earth do not know that they exist. The personal protective shields function in the same way as the protective shields of our aircraft. Any energy hitting them is converted and reinforces the shields, by what means they become absolutely impenetrable and indestructible. Also, Any matter hitting the protective shields, including firearm bullets, etc., immediately turn into pure energy, which the protective shield takes in and absorbs, strengthening it. Larger objects, such as large meteors or comets, on the other hand, are only partially dissolved into energy, while the largest part is hurled away by the impact on the protective shield.
Contact Report 307.
1945 OA. The following for my person, you should already know this, will be from 1953, a young woman from the DAL universe, where you will certainly be taken once. The name of the person you meet will be Asket. She is a member of one of our branching peoples, some of whom are still at home in the Lyra and Pathos systems, but shifted to this space-time level by a fraction of a second, as well as our space-time structure in which our player and systems exist.
Contact Report 311.
That is not a need for us because ultimately, our most distant ancestors were responsible for the fact that the Traveler, the Destroyer Comet, could penetrate into this space-time configuration and could arrive into the SOL system. For at that time, they did not have their dimension gate under control.
Of course, one can also look at it in such a way. Here is another question. Regarding the Syrians who at that time presented Svath with their pear-shaped spaceship, did that concern a people who, here on the Earth, is called Nomo, and did those who provided the gift belong to the genetic manipulators?
A people called Nomo is unknown to us, and indeed in our space-time configuration as well as in yours. My father Svath received his flying device as a gift from Assyrian people who are called Samanet.
Did these people have something to do with the genetic manipulators?
No, that is not the case. With the Samanet people, it deals with a people who live in a space-time configuration, which is not identical with that in which the genetic manipulators live.
Does it deal then with our space-time configuration?
No, that is not the case.
Then, in 1976, Simya Se, your daughter, also did not speak of two solar systems of the planets of Sirius in our space-time configuration, rather of a completely different one.
Certainly. We always only speak of the constellations known to you in your space-time configuration in order to show, in terms of direction, approximately what the talk is about in regard to the space-time configuration spoken about by us.
Uh-huh. And how does it stand then with that in regard to inhabited systems in our space-time configuration?
Then we also do not speak of another space-time configuration or of other dimensions.
Contact Report 321.
During a conversation with Quetzal in the 80s, it was once mentioned that you do research on the refraction of foreign universes, which means that you want to construct a trans-universe transmission gate that enables you to advance into another universe, which is not a parallel universe like the DAL universe or a sister universe, but effectively a foreign universe. And if you succeed in this, Quetzal said at the time, then it should be possible for you to advance into many other foreign universes. At that time, Quetzal spoke about it. It was 1987 or so, as far as I know, that it would take another 15 years or so until your research and the corresponding technology had progressed so far that one could talk about it again. The question now is, has all the research and construction progressed so far that everything is nearing completion? And what about the other project, the transmitter gate through which I can go to Simyase one day, as you promised me? But what about when you have finished the new technology with the Trans-Universe Transmitter Gate, or Trans-Universe Transmission Gate, as it was called by Quetzal? Is there a chance for me to be taken with you and your giant space traveler to one or more of the foreign universes? When I think that I was not only the first, and so far the only human being on Earth to be allowed to visit the Playaran and the DAL universe, and now I am to be given the opportunity to be taken into a foreign universe, or into several of them, then I could go directly megalomaniac. But if that really happens, then I will probably be so overwhelmed by everything that I will only become small and ugly.
Contact Report 325.
Dern Universe and Dal Universe, or Dern Creation and Dal Creation. What does that mean? I mean Dern and Dal.
The meaning is given in an ancient language that goes back to Nokademion. The wording is as follows. Dern Universe or Dern Creation means Dajansini Ern Ruan Nitra Perlano, which means creation that unveils itself. Dal Universe or Dal Creation means in the ancient language Dajansini Arg Lazar Noralin, which means creation as second born.
Contact Report 328.
Now and then Earth humans from our future come into our dimension and thus into our space-time continuum, as you explained to me on my great journey. Also the skrills and bioorganic flying objects, two special species, penetrate into our dimension from a dimension affiliated to us. Does this also apply to other humans of other dimensions who do not belong to you, or to the Earth from the future?
That is the case, yes. But such occurrences are very rarely observed by us.
And what about strangers from outside our Dern universe coming into our universe area from an alien universe, apart from Asket's race from the DAL universe?
Something like that is not known to us. Even our very extensive monitoring and constant checks have never revealed anything that would indicate such events.
There's no possibility?
At least it's extremely small, because outside of our Dern-Dal twin universe, we are mostly surrounded by universes that are only subtle and therefore much more highly developed than our two universes. This is also the reason why we cannot break into these universes.
So you have already explored this. Interesting, but how are you supposed to get into another material universe, as you want to do? It's a mystery to me. Somehow you should be able to create a highly concentrated energy channel through the subtle universes, something like a wormhole that goes through all the higher evolutionary universes to a lower, material creation universe, as stated in Nokademion's teachings. But you cannot reach its memory banks.
Amazing what you know about this. Apparently you have more knowledge in these matters than you ever mentioned to us. Your explanation corresponds to the actual facts, but I must confess to you that our own scientists did not gain the knowledge and find the solution to be able to enter foreign universes. The truth is that we have obtained the knowledge and plans and formulas, etc. elsewhere.
This can only be the very advanced humans of Asket's friends. But when will the enterprise that is to take you to a foreign universe take place now? And when can my jump to Simyase through the transmitter gate take place?
There is nothing to hide from you. However, with regard to your question, I can assure you that at least my journey to the foreign universe we have already determined, which is a universe of creation like ours, will take place this year. We have already transported a transmitter station into the alien universe through the energy channel you mentioned, in order to create attempts to get test objects transported back through this station, which we transport to it through the energy channel. All the experiments in 800,000 ways have been flawless and without the slightest malfunction.
Is this technology identical to the gate, through which one can bridge immeasurable distances in our universe simply by passing through it?
No. It's not the same technical achievement. Because the technology by which an energy channel can be used by an alien universe of higher energetic form is a much higher evolution of the technology than the one you address with the transmitter gate.
Of course, it's understandable. For my part, I have not dealt with Nokademion's technology, nor have I retrieved the relevant data. For reasons of principle, I have been content with simply informing myself about what is necessary to be able to enter a foreign universe of creation, and how it can be managed to penetrate or bridge higher energy universes or forms of creation, etc. Of course I was interested in this information when you told me some time ago, that you would soon be making a journey to a foreign universe, as your technology was already so highly developed that it now allowed such a journey.
Contact Report 331.
For my part, I am to order from Ptah to you and all group members that he sends his greetings to everyone, and that he and all his companions are well, and that no problems have arisen. Meanwhile, he has penetrated into the material part of the universe. As I told you earlier, they have not yet found any life forms of any higher kind. Finds of life forms are limited so far only to microorganisms. Furthermore, it is a first universe, that is to say, universe of creation, like our Dern universe.
And the universe adjacent to our Dern universe, what form is that? Could that already be fathomed? A channel had to be created through it, which is probably called a wormhole here. In any case, it must be something that falls within this framework.
The adjacent universe, which we have not yet named, as well as the one where Ptah is not located, is a higher universe, a central universe, which we cannot travel to. Since it is dimensioned differently in its evolution than our Dern universe and its dimensions, we are only able to create an energy tunnel through it in order to reach the other side of the universe where Ptah is located. So what you call channel, we call energy tunnel.
Ptah is over there with his giant room, and it must take enormous masses of energy to create this tunnel and maintain it. And how do you create this energy?
That is correct. Ptah is in the alien universe with his wide-bodied flying machine. The energy for the creation of the energy tunnel and its maintenance we get from a black hole, as you call it. Other sources would be far too small in every way to generate the necessary energy.
Could you make a comparison?
I am not familiar with this field, but I know that the energies needed per second include several times the mass of energy, as you call it, that a sun like the one in your system releases in 1 second.
As a layman in physics, I am afraid this is a closed book. But it gives me the notion that an enormous mass of energy is needed, which we on Earth are probably not yet capable of producing by any means, right?
That is absolutely correct. Such enormous energies cannot be created by pure technical means, as they are available to terrestrial human beings or even to us. In fact, gigantic cosmic objects are required for this purpose, which must also be inexhaustible in their energy supply, as is only the case with a black hole.
Can any kind of black hole be used for this purpose? That is to say, a stationary or a moving one?
In principle, the energies can be used by everyone, but for the specific purpose of the energy tunnel, only the energies of a stationary black hole can be used. In the case of our energy tunnel, however, we do not use a simple black hole to generate energy, but a twin structure, by which I mean two similar black holes that are close to each other and allow their energies to flow into each other.
Contact Report 334.
Whatever interests me, what is to be expected in terms of life and physical matters in the alien universe?
According to the latest information, no human life forms have been found yet, neither in a more highly developed nor in an original form. On several occasions, however, very low life has already been found.
You mean microorganisms?
Yes, and in many different forms. But higher life must already exist in this universe, because different amino acids, etc., were found. Ptah expects that sooner or later he will also encounter human life.
Contact Report 340.
Ptah reported that many new things were discovered which are unknown in our universe, and which must have developed and changed and dissolved at the earliest times. The calculations showed that the foreign universe in its total existence is 22 trillion years younger than our Dern universe. The material belt, and thus the visible material universe, has a current age of 9 billion years, and is therefore much younger than ours. Apart from microorganisms, diverse small life forms and a planet with primeval human life forms, and all kinds of small, medium, large and very large animals as well as air and water beings. No highly developed life forms have yet been found, by which I mean beings of the human species. Probably it will still take a long time before such life is found. As has been shown by the discovery of the primeval human forms, highly developed beings must therefore also exist.
Let's be surprised at the possibilities that lie ahead. Have you actually created a name for the alien universe yet?
A provisional name was given, but in the meantime, according to Ptah's proposal, the name Radern Universe has been established for the foreign universe.
I see. What does this designation mean?
Of course, you cannot know that. The term Radern refers to the abbreviation of Rane Alinu Dajansini Ern Ruan Nitra Pralano.
Right. Very interesting. But I'm standing like a donkey on a mountain, because apart from Dajansini, which means creation, and Nitra Pralano, which means unveiled, everything is like a bohemian village to me. Unfortunately, I cannot understand more. And how is everything written?
I understand. In our written language, all nouns are written with capital letters, as is every word at the beginning of a sentence. You can take the German written language as a model. The name Rane Alinu Dajansini Ern Ruan Nitra Pralano comes from the old language of Nocodemion and means new foreign creation that unveils itself. Note: a summary of the findings of the expedition into this foreign universe is given in Contact Report 345, with additional details given in Contact Report 449.
Contact Report 359.
Nevertheless, I cannot exclude the possibility that they could have been bioorganic missiles of different dimensions, which, as you know, are harmless life forms from a neighboring dimension and which can usually only be photographed by infrared cameras or recorded on infrared film.
Contact Report 367.
And should it be that in the coming time other alien beings find their way to Earth in such a way that they establish open contact with earthly humanity, then we will withdraw definitively into our space-time structure, because our directives are aligned in this form.
Contact Report 402.
Apart from the differently dimensioned bioorganic missiles, there are similar species on Earth, which show the most different forms. Sea rods.
Contact Report 410.
The direct ancestors of the yellow races, as the races of China and Japan are called with you on Earth, came to Earth 25,994 years ago, counted from today on, and settled in the areas of today's China and Japan. Their very distant ancestors were at very early times or millions of years, like the white, red and brown races, partly refugees from the Sirius areas, which were shifted to the Dern space-time structure. The yellow races first settled in distant regions beyond the Sun or central Sun, where they founded large races in the Nisan system on a planet called Kudra, and created a huge overpopulation. As a result, in addition to the fact that the planet was slowly becoming uninhabitable, a great emigration took place about 2.4 million years ago, with large masses migrating and settling in the Lyra systems on this side of the central Sun on a neighboring planet of Lasan. Their planet was called Nisan. These systems and planets in the Lyra regions were also offset to our space-time structure by fractions of a second or seconds, whereas the Nisan system and its planets, thus also Kudra, beyond the galaxy, belong to the Dern space-time structure.
Contact Report 424.
In the last century, only one unintentional contact took place in South America, whereby the space travelers came from another space-time structure from the region of Alpha Centauri.
Another question regarding your federation. You once said that it stretches over many dimensions or space-time structures and over 50 million light-years. May I ask you how many different dimensions your federation consists of?
And it has to be said in regard to our federation that it is spread out over 3 dimensions, and that our 2 dimensions, ours and yours, are included.
Contact Report 428.
The great spaceship, which at that time suffered a breakdown and was destroyed, out of which the so-called Tunguska event resulted, belonged to a people who live in a distant galaxy in your space-time configuration.
Contact Report 433.
But tell me, have you discovered anything new about the fact that such strange things happen to us in the center? Such as things which disappear without a trace, without having someone visible taking them away? A few days ago, Ava put 2 photographic slides on the box for me, and without anyone being able to take them away from us, they simply vanished without a trace, as did the book, at that time which was placed in the bookshelf, as we both saw on the recordings, just suddenly, from one moment to the next, disappeared without a trace, never to reappear, as have many other things too. Also, it is indeed inexplicable that Guido's alarm clock regularly runs backwards if he has it here in the center, but normally runs forwards when he has it at home again. And now, the same phenomenon also occurred with a second alarm clock, which he brought with him. Also, there is the matter of when I write something on the computer, and then later something completely different is expressed, and it often has the opposite of that which I have written, or that entire paragraphs or individual words disappear or are altered, which is just as strange as many other occurrences which go along the same lines and have already often created irritation. And this has been going on for years, and it looks as if any number of goblins, were such to exist, want to drive us mad.
This is certainly not the case, because goblins are mythical creatures which have never existed, as you have immediately corrected your remark. We cannot explain all these incidents either. However, I have a suspicion that any number of human entities from another dimension are making mischief, perhaps out of the terrestrial future, whereby a justification for that, however, appears to be extremely puzzling. Should people of the Earth's future be in on the act, which more likely to be excluded, nonetheless is still not completely ruled out. Then the grounds for the whole thing could rest in the fact that, in the future, your mission will conflict with certain things in a group's plans, for which reason they are trying to hinder or falsify certain things in the center in their past, which is your present time.
Contact Report 443.
Reptoid, respectively, reptilian beings, as these are described in the nonsensical books, exist even less in the entire universe than they do in other dimensions of this universe, so, however, also not on the Earth, also not in forms of transmuted humans.
Contact Report 446.
Our very extensive research on all planets known to us and inhabited by human life of various kinds in extensive areas of your galaxy, as well as in our space-time continuum, has not been successful.
Contact Report 448.
This probably includes the Dimension Gate, which you are probably still working on, right? Here on television, there is a series running that is called Stargate, which is roughly comparable with your Dimension Gate. Only its appearance and function are a little different than what you showed me 3 times. In this science fiction on television, a large ring is used, which is equipped with control symbols, and in front of this, there is a kind of control panel. This in contrast to your mechanism, which needs nothing of the sort, but which is set into operation just by a small device on your overalls, out of which nothing appears like a gate flickering at the edges, that is to say a passageway, through which one recognizes the other dimension or the area, etc. that exists beyond the gate. The whole thing works as though one would look through a window or through a door that would have simply been placed in the open countryside.
Yes, This gate is also among the achievements of the sonar with whom we have developed it. And in addition, it is to be said that the whole thing became so functional a few weeks ago that it can also be used perfectly and safely for the passage of humans. We can move back and forth through it, both in the present time as well as in different space-time configurations, that is to say, dimensions.
And can you also go to the DAL universe with it?
That is not possible for us, but our engineers and scientists are working together with the sonar in order to make this a reality.
Then another question about the foreigners, who have already circled around here on Earth for a very long time, as you say, and with whom you cannot enter into contact. Is it possible that these unknowns may come from the future, perhaps from other planets or even from the Earth itself, or else from another dimension?
We have also thought about that and have come to the conclusion that this may very well be possible, both the one and the other possibility. The Earth humans will undoubtedly create the possibility of dimension traveling in the distant future, which we have not investigated, however.
And why have you held back in this connection?
We only operate our past and future travels and previews under certain conditions, but not just to know the distant or most distant future, which is why, if necessary, we limit ourselves to a maximum time of 100 years for future investigation, while no boundaries are set for travels to the past. We don't want to know the distant and most distant future for logical reasons, for we know that only the path of normal development leads to the real and right goal. The reason for the limitation of future investigation is so that the present is not influenced as a result of knowing the future, which would disturb the normal course of development. Such a disturbance wouldn't be good, because the appearing causes of the ongoing development would naturally be changed and be distorted, which would cause a disaster as an effect. It is not like what many Earth humans suppose, that something could be changed for the better if the facts of the future would be known. For logic proves that the person acts totally incorrectly if he knows the effective future, for he thinks that he could cause something better than what is determined by the logical consistency of cause and effect. This is proven by the absurd ideas of Earth humans, who think that if they traveled to the past, they could change what has already happened in the future.
I understand. Like those who believe that they, for example, could travel back in time, could kill Adolf Hitler, and thus could prevent World War II and all its horrors. This means that the person always wants to be cleverer and more knowledge than what the effective truth and reality are.
First of all, we play Aaron and our Confederates live in other space-time configurations, into which no normal telepathic impulses of Earth humans or other inhabitants from this, your space-time configuration, can penetrate. A penetration into our space-time configuration from yours is only possible through spirit telepathy, but no Earth human is capable of this except you. And after your being, we withdraw ourselves finally into our space-time configuration, without ever having to return, for we fulfilled our obligation that was assigned to us by your former personalities and by you at present. Only the old assigned obligation led us to the fulfillment of duty in this space-time configuration, in which you lead your life and fulfill your difficult mission. Only in the very distant future, when Earth humanity has progressed so far on a technological basis, in order to be ready to penetrate into our space-time configuration, will they encounter our worlds and civilizations and be able to take up contact with them.
Contact Report 450.
And that you have never seen this shape, size, and intensity of light before, that is because it is a completely new flying apparatus with many innovations, including the type of light. This new type of flying apparatus allows us to use the recently launched Dimension Gate, as you call it, and which we have been calling it since its completion. as we have adopted your term. So we can, with this new technology, penetrate into other dimensions and other space-time structures, and thus also move into the future and into the past.
Contact Report 451.
This is definitely not the case, because our new and extremely accurate devices, which we received from the Sonern, are much more advanced than ours. But even with these devices, we could not detect any other extraterrestrial or Earth foreign flying objects of any kind in the entire terrestrial space. The new devices also work in a very extensive range of fine material, as well as dimension-jumping vibrations. But even in these areas, we could not detect any other Earth visitors.
Contact Report 452.
We were only later able to clarify the facts about the Pegasus refugees when the whole story about the Giza intelligences clarified. The refugees belonged to a splinter group of the Giza intelligences, who lived in the space-time displaced region of the Pegasus constellation and who had entered an alliance with the faction living on the Earth. Therefore, they were counted as one of the Giza intelligences, and consequently were not described as special foreigners.
Contact Report 460.
Are there any new things concerning the alien universe, Radern universe you call it, if I remember correctly? Are there any new insights?
If your question refers to new worlds inhabited by humans, then I must disappoint you, because more such worlds have not been found yet, except those you already know about. Like the Dern universe, the Radern universe is also sparsely populated by human life forms.
I guess it is. But are you already exploring other space-time structures in the new universe?
No, we are not yet given the opportunity for this, which will remain so for a long time to come, because the necessary conditions must first be created.
But even if you do, it will not be possible to find masses of planets with humanities.
That will be the case.
Reality is a little different than what science fiction movies make us believe, that there are worlds inhabited by humans in every corner of the universe. In truth, they are extremely rare, which is why your Federation is scattered over 50 million light-years and comprises 2 different space-time structures, if I remember Quetzal's explanations correctly.
Your memory is not deceiving you. Worlds habitable by human life forms are seldom found in all space-time structures of the universe.
Quetzal once said that the same is true of planets that support only animal and vegetable life. Worlds on which the lowest life exists, such as microbes and bacteria, are more frequent. Such worlds could be very hot, also normal, or very cold, so to speak. If there is also life that exists in or on fire planets or ice planets, etc.
That corresponds to our scientific findings.
Contact Report 463.
Well, then I would like to ask about what your daughter Simyase said to me once, and indeed, that somewhere in your space-time configuration, a planet exists where women live exclusively.
Contact Report 465.
Other than our mythologies that speak of chimeras, are there actually such creatures on other worlds?
They do exist, but we know of only one planet where such beings exist. They are purely human life forms and float through the air by levitation, but also walk on the ground in a normal way. They live in your space-time structure, on a world in the spiral galaxy which you call Galaxy NGC 2770, Link, which is about 12 billion years old. This is the spiral galaxy we came to on your great journey through a time jump of about 90 million years back into the past, where you could observe the huge explosion of a supernova at the outer edge of the galaxy. At that time, however, there were not yet higher life forms in that galaxy.
Contact Report 466.
You fly at a single and multiple speed of light in your spaceships, and our earthly scientists claim that this is impossible and that a spaceship can never reach this high speed, because the friction with matter, or with material space and ether, prevents this. Yes, it cannot be the electromagnetic radiation by which you protect yourself from the cosmic influences and the so-called cosmic ether in order to reach the speed of light and beyond. Yes, electromagnetic radiation of all kinds has the same speed, so about 300,000 kilometers per second, so it is probably not possible that you can use it to prevent friction. So it must be something else that you can use to prevent any friction with the ether or any matter. Is there something very special that you can name that allows you to go 1 and multiple times the speed of light? Is that a secret, or are you allowed to say something about it? I have never asked about it before, but I am always being asked questions about it that I cannot answer.
It is not a secret. And when I talk about it, I do not give away anything with which the earthly scientists can start something, because their knowledge and ability is far from being sufficient for them to make use of it at the present time and thus cause harm. So I can say that we use the photons, that is to say the light particles and time radiation, to shield our space flights from the material and anti-material environment. So we wrap our space flights in a photon force field and in a time radiation screen and protect them from friction against the material space. The photons do not have any weight, but the mass zero, as it is also the case with respect to the time radiation, because they are both pure energy without any medium of their own, which is why they are neutral against any matter and are repelled by gravity. So we make use of this, namely by enclosing our spaceflight devices in a photon and time radiation screen, so that no friction with the material space can occur, which enables us to reach the speed of light and even to exceed it by a very high multiple, because no resistance by any matter appears. To explain details would be irresponsible, because Earth humans are not yet allowed to possess these, because they maliciously use all special achievements for weapon systems and war purposes, etc., which would also be the case with regard to photon technology. And as far as the ether in world space is concerned, it truly does not exist, because this is a mistaken assumption of the earthly scientists. That what they assume to be ether is indeed pure energy, a radiation, and this does not have its own medium and therefore no mass.
Explained briefly and concisely. Thank you. Time radiation. Could one perhaps also call it tachyon matter, which must also be without medium. Ether thus does not exist, but only radiation, which is pure energy without mass. However, now the question how you can do it, to shield your spaceships against view and make them invisible for eyes and radar, etc. Are you allowed to say something about this? But I think that now finally something becomes clearer to me. If you shield your flying apparatus against any material friction by a photon shield or photon protection shield, then it is probably so I assume, that these always light up when you have switched on this photon shield. Is that true?
This corresponds to the actual situation, and the term tachyon matter can be applied in a certain way. But it is a time vibration or time radiation and has nothing to do with matter of any form. And regarding the invisibility of our flying apparatus, we can actually make our spaceflight apparatuses, as well as those we use in planetary airspaces, invisible to any view of any kind, by using special metallic alloys, the basis of which is, among other things, silver. As you know from the metallurgical analyses of the material of our flying apparatuses made in the USA. The materials used in our flying apparatus and spaceflight devices are transformed and superordinate composite materials, the composition and manufacture of which I cannot mention, but I can say that we obtain everything through cold fusion processes, as Marcel Vogel in the USA already discovered through his metallurgical analysis when you gave him the metal samples we received for analysis. So, when a flying apparatus, a spacecraft, a human or any other object is made invisible, It is by directing light around it. The light waves are not reflected, but flow unbroken and uninhibitedly around the object, so that it becomes invisible to any natural or technical eye of any kind, also radar, etc., and simply allows the background to be seen unchanged.
Contact Report 467.
The Destroyer, which came out of our space-time structure through a dimensional gate into your space-time structure and caused a lot of trouble in it, which is why we removed it from the Sol system some years ago and made it harmless.
Contact Report 476.
The population of the planet Akart belonged to our Federation, as well as also the population of the worlds of Proxima Centauri and others from there and other local regions of space around there, from which several of them have come to the Earth. However, all of these worlds belong in our space-time configuration. Consequently, they also possess several of our technologies, like, for example, that technology with which they are able to bridge the time barrier and come into your space-time configuration. This is indeed the case, which is why we also use completely different techniques for interplanetary and intergalactic communication. Radio and television waves have a maximum range of only 1 to 2 light years, after which they become completely distorted and become rushing, clattering, hissing, and other sounds from which data can no longer be deciphered.
Your interdimensional and intergalactic communication is based on a faster-than-light technology.
Contact Report 503.
You and your Lyrian ancestors, who also come from your space-time structure.
Contact Report 510.
At that time, you also spoke of the Destroyer, which came from your space-time structure and which you had rendered harmless. But you also spoke of the spacewalker known from the ancestors of the Celts, Sumerians, and Egyptians as a destroyer. How is this to be understood?
The ancestors of the Celts, but also the Sumerians and Egyptians, used the term destroyer. So they used the same name as we did for the wandering planet, which entered the Sol system from our space-time structure through a dimensional gate.
So for many thousands of years there were 2 such spacewalkers with the same names in our solar system.
That is correct. We called the wandering planet from the Kuiper belt Kuiper Destroyer. The one that broke into the Sol system from our space-time structure we simply called Destroyer. This one, as you say, we eliminated years ago, while the other one, the Kuiper Destroyer, continues to orbit the Sol system.
Contact Report 511.
But we Pleiaren and our Federation and the ancient Lyrians are excluded from this, because even our very distant ancestors knew the Sol system and the Earth, and so they visited the Earth millions of years ago.
This is familiar to me, because they came to the Sol system because of the moon, whose path they followed when it blasted out of their space-time structure through a dimensional gate into our space-time structure and settled on Earth.
Interstellar space travel is extremely rare, as is the possibility of moving through dimensional gates into another space-time continuum, as we do and can also create such gates. And it must also be said that those who came to Earth from other space-time continuums could not deliberately create and fix the necessary dimensional gates, because in fact they were only able to move into this dimension of the Dern universe through momentary natural cracks in their space-time continuum. Others, on the other hand, who came from the Dern dimension only came to Earth because they could create and use space-time gates, which is also a rarity.
Interesting, but you never told about that. Neither did your daughter Simya nor Quetzal. Space-time gates. Are they identical to the so-called wormholes that earthly astronomers suspect?
Space-time gates do not concern so-called wormholes, but rather similar to a momentary natural crack in the space-time continuum, a crack in the space-time continuum caused by tremendous explosions or technical manipulations. This creates an effect that changes the universal wave structure of the universal space, which is similar to the effect of two rooms being separated from each other by a curtain of radiation or heat, which can easily be passed through from one side to the other, respectively, from one room to the other.
Contact Report 519.
Only such Earth foreigners and future Earth followers have come to Earth, but never any others from foreign galaxies and solar systems that did not have the coordinates handed down. So others did not reach Earth, as alleged contactors lie and claim.
This apart from the skrills and the bioorganic flying objects in the future of Earth from other dimensions, as you say. If all the many claims about contacts between the human beings of Earth and extraterrestrials were true, then Earth would be teeming with extraterrestrials.
Contact Report 521.
What interests me now, there are an infinite number of universes, which also have different developments. That is to say, they are lower and higher developed. What is your knowledge about the natural laws of all these universes? Are they uniform or different?
According to our research findings, we know that universes like our Dern universe and its sister universe, the Dal universe, also have the same laws of nature as the parallel universe we discovered, which we call the Radern universe, into which we could penetrate and explore. More highly developed universes, which no longer have a belt of matter, but only consist of pure fine or finest material energy, no longer have any laws of nature, because they are only classified as energetic fine or finest material laws. Laws of nature are thus only given in universes that have a matter belt in which such laws are active. But since we only know our Dern and the Dal and Radern universes, which are all oriented in the same direction with respect to the laws of nature, we cannot say with absolute certainty whether there are other laws of nature than the ones we know, as they exist in our Dern and the Dal and Radern universes.
So far, so clear. But there is another question that concerns me. Since there are infinitely many universes that one might imagine to be an infinitely gigantic pile of soap bubbles, I wonder why they all do not pressurize and not destroy each other. Admittedly, I know that the seventh belt, the ramming belt, serves on the one hand to allow the universe to expand, and on the other hand, that two universes can align themselves like soap bubbles without destroying each other.
Our very far-reaching knowledge says that in absolute non-space, in addition to 7 absolutum universes, there are also 1049 different universe forms which exist in infinite numbers and which all have different stages of development, from the simple universe, as it is our Dern universe, up to the most highly developed fine material spiritual energetic universe form. But what they all have in common is that they all consist of 7 different belts, also the finest material energetic belts. It is also common to them all that they are all uniformly energetically poled in the ram belt, in the outermost belt area. This is the reason why all the most different universes do not interfere with each other in any way, and therefore they also do not collide directly with each other and cannot become dangerous.
In a structure of soap bubbles, there is only a thin skin from one bubble to the other. Therefore, in the universes, the outermost edge of the ramming belt must have a specially formed energy layer, so to speak, through which practically no collision with another universe, respectively with its ramming belt, can occur. This outermost energy layer of the ramming belt would, therefore, be present in all universes in the same way and with the same polarization, and would prevent universes from being able to pressurize each other or even destroy each other, if I have understood you correctly. The only thing that can happen is that the universes repel or respectively displace each other, whereby the multi-universe expands more and more, if I may say and explain it in this way. If I have understood the whole thing correctly, then all universes, all lower ones as well as all higher and highest ones, are equally polarized in the outermost part of their ramming belts, so that they repel each other, as is also the case with magnets of the same polarity, which repel each other and keep a certain space between each other.
This is very well explained and corresponds to the effective facts.
Some researchers suspect that there really are many universes, and that a so-called Big Bang has taken place in each one of them, which is in line with the facts. But scientists are not yet ready to know that new universes will continue to be created endlessly. They also suspect that the individual universes, which they compare with bubbles respectively with soap bubbles, deviate from our Dern universe with regard to the laws of nature, so that there must be universes without stars. Of course they are right, except that in the fine and ultrafine energetic universes there are no laws of nature. But according to your explanation, there are only fine and ultrafine energetic laws, so that in such universes there can be no matter belts and no galaxies, suns, planets, meteors, and comets, etc. But it is well known that there is still a great deal that our scientists do not know, which is why they have to keep revising. Today they do not even know that our Dern universe, like every other universe, also consists of 7 different egg-shaped respectively oval belts, and that in our universe, the 4th belt alone represents the material part of the universe. They also do not know that all galaxies move in such a way that they move towards a certain point in the material universe, where a constant change takes place, and where matter renews itself, so the matter belt experiences a complete renewal in the course of 49 billion years.
Contact Report 528.
The moon is not from the Earth, as our scientists claim, but from your space-time structure, and it came into our space-time structure as a result of a cosmic catastrophe and through an artificial dimension gate, where it was held by the gravity of the Earth.
When a cosmic catastrophe occurred in our space-time structure at an early time, a second, smaller moon collided with the larger one, which then, as Quetzal explained, found its way to Earth as today's Earth-moon.
Contact Report 541.
There are still also the various large and small dimension change-capable flying objects from the Earth's future.
Contact Report 547.
However, in 1995, when we dissolved our stations on Earth, the danger still existed. According to our calculations of probability, from that time on, there was the impending possibility that we player peoples could have been drawn into a war. As we explained to you at that time, to which we obliged you to remain silent, an attack on Earth could have taken place, namely by a large armada of space planes of a planet-wide, dictatorially led, and warlike multi-ethnic state from the same space-time structure from which we Pleiaren also come. These peoples, who did not belong to the Pleiaren Federation, were very warlike and conquest-addicted in nature, similar to Earth humans. They had been constantly fighting with their own races for more than 1,100 years, and at that time, they were about to penetrate the space-time structure of the Dern universe through their space technology, on the same path that also gives us the possibility to enter this dimension, where the Milky Way galaxy, and therefore also the Sol system and Earth, are located. With us, the Pleiaren, these peoples maintained constant and contentious contacts, and often warlike actions were also threatened, because the dictatorial powers of the planetary multi-ethnic state called Hardom were constantly trying to invade and conquer the Pleiaren worlds. As a result, we had to be on constant defensive alert to these peoples, while also keeping our secrets, which were related to many things of our technology and which we had to protect, in order to protect ourselves against these ever-present aggressors. But through infamous machinations, they managed to get hold of the technology regarding the possibility of breaking through into other space-time structures. So they learned to master them in the course of time and also gain knowledge regarding the Dern space-time structure and the Milky Way, as well as the SOL system and the Earth. In 1918, through some unpleasant events, they learned of our efforts in the SOL system and on Earth, in terms of Earth years, so that from then on they tried to come into this space-time continuum and to Earth, which we always managed to prevent. This has been going on since 1996, and fortunately the Hardom are making a very serious effort to grow into a completely new way of life, which in just 16 years has led to the Hardom being incorporated into our Pleioran Federation protection and thus becoming a candidate for our Pleioran Federation. It was only in this way that we were able to interfere in the foreign things, and that it was also possible to stop the Hardom from breaking through into your space-time structure and wreaking havoc on Earth.
Contact Report 556.
Admittedly, since that time we have registered activities again and again in the terrestrial airspace, and I mean up to the present time, but in connection to this, we see the three alien groups to us as those who are truthfully already here for a long time, or even belong to the Earth, perhaps also in a future dimension.
Contact Report 568.
Skrill beings are beings that switch between their foreign dimension and other dimensions, which is why they are called dimension changers. The term Skrill means degenerate for the Pleioran. The Skrills call themselves Skrill, which in their language means dimension changer. Without a doubt, the human beings are human beings, but they are brutal, bestial, and extremely sex-crazed, male and female. The only horror about these other dimension beings is that they are completely degenerate and able to change from their dimension into other dimensions, where they attack and rape living beings in the other dimensions. But this does not happen very often. So the human beings of other dimensions, such as our dimension, can only clear and pave the way for these Skrills by a special psychic depressive misbehavior. This is to say that these Skrills can only penetrate into other dimensions and work there if other living beings of other dimensions clear the way for them by self-destructively driving their psyche to malfunctions, and thus collapsing psychically depressively. This, however, is so rare that with regard to 1 million psychic depressive human beings, it might just happen to one who can be attacked by a Skrill being.
Contact Report 571.
Our investigations in this regard are based on time travel into the distant past of the Earth, where research was carried out and effective results were obtained that corresponded to the reality of events.
Contact Report 576.
We also know from our investigations and studies that these Earth foreigners are not able to penetrate our space-time structure.
Contact Report 578.
The necessary clarifications only now became possible for us through the available technology provided to us by the sonar, through which we were able to provide clarity that a danger on the part of strangers to us Pleioran and the Federation can likewise be excluded, as well as that it is not possible of the Earth strangers to penetrate into our space-time configuration.
Contact Report 579.
When the spirit leaves the human body, then it escapes into its beyond plane, which exists in the same space as the present reality of the planet, though the so-called beyond plane is in another dimension in comparison to the real material reality space, and I mean in finest spiritual energetic nature. Regarding the planet, the beyond plane therefore is arranged around it. Like this plane, however, also is further existing universe-wide, however in contrast to the material reality plane in a finest material, to which the human as material life form in no way has access, and consequently nothing can be seen and nothing detected. Therefore, Is it in this plane impossible for human to see or somehow detect the material body escaping spirit, respectively spirit form? That the beyond area of the planet in a differently dimensioned form than the real material reality space is not only arranged for it, but also in the entire universe. This has its reason.
Contact Report 680.
When the spirit leaves the human body, then it escapes into its beyond plane, which exists in the same space as the present reality of the planet, whereby the so-called beyond plane, contrary to the real material reality space, is differently dimensioned, namely in a subtle spiritual energetic nature. In relation to the planet, therefore, the otherworldly plane is arranged around the planet, just as this plane continues to exist throughout the universe. But in relation to the material reality plane, it is in a subtle reality to which human beings, as a material life form, have no access whatsoever, and consequently they can neither see nor perceive anything. Therefore, on this level, it is impossible for human beings to see or otherwise perceive the spirit respectively, the spirit form that has escaped from the material body. That the afterlife realm of the planet is arranged in a different dimensional form than the real material reality space, not only in this, but also in the entire universe, has its reason.
Contact Report 645, Asfarth, 1947.
Time is not the same everywhere because it depends on gravity and speed. In the case of a sun or a planet, time fluctuates depending on its size and distance from the center of gravity. This means that the further time is measured from the gravitational center, the faster it becomes as it slows down, but the closer it is to the gravitational center. With moons, planets, and suns, etc., this concerns per year, however, only millionth seconds. This means that near the gravitational center of a sun or planet, etc., the time flow is slowest, while it becomes faster on the sun or planet's surface, etc., as well as on mountains and in space. In this respect, this is dependent on the size and mass of a body, and thus on its gravitation. So the more massive a celestial body is, the slower the time is, consequently it loses itself in extremely low values, and even in the standstill of time with a dark giant structure or with a massive object, which tears suns, planets, other world space objects, gases, and all kinds of matter into itself by its force of attraction, and thereby becomes more and more powerful and massive, and finally completely cancels the flow of time. The enormous masses of such dark giant formations, which even tear entire galaxies into themselves, and into which they cannot penetrate, but which can radiate externally through torn suns and galaxies, etc., as bright spherical formations, exhibit such an enormous attraction, which is so extremely strong that no matter and no light signal can penetrate from this space area to the outside, and also no time can exist. Time exists only there where solid space structures, like evenly suns, planets, and other structures, are as these or given evenly in galaxies or outside these, as world space wanderers. So time only exists where there are gravitational forces. Where, however, no gravity exists, there is also no time, but only endless duration and thus timelessness. The world space is also traversed by dark and mighty world space wanderers with great gravitational force, through which time streams are created so that those who travel the world space can get into such time streams, although we are protected against their effects. This is because our spacecrafts have their own gravitations, and are therefore protected against external time influences, as well as against matter and radiation. And we are also protected by our gravitational technique against the effects of speed, so that time does not slow down for us in the spacecraft when we move through space at very high speed. And in order to compensate for the flow of time outside the spacecraft, which is caused by high speeds, we have a special technique of time travel, which allows us on the one hand to remain in the so-called normal time despite high speeds, but on the other hand also to travel into the past and future. Concerning Earth, the present on Earth's surface, according to earthly time determination, lasts exactly 2.6678 seconds and is placed between the past and the future, whereby this present time is to be calculated according to the period of time during which the human brain is normally able to bring about a conscious concentration with regard to a matter. However, this concentration build-up time changes depending on the mental development of Earth humans, as well as the amount of time changes depending on the invasion of world space material on Earth, whereby Earth also changes its gravitational strength over time. The collision with meteorites and fine space material makes Earth heavier every year, by thousands of tons. So in this way, Earth increases in mass every year, whereby by far the largest part of it is dust fine and too small to burn up with corresponding speed in the atmosphere. Consequently, the fine particles sink slowly to Earth and cannot be observed, just like shooting stars and bigger or big meteorites.
Back in 1947, your father spoke of dark giant formations and dark giant formations, which I must understand as black holes today.
That's right, of course.
Contact Report 651.
And we call these groupings Earth Future Ones, because the one grouping is effectively Earth Future or exists in the distant future on Earth, and comes through time bridges into the present time.
Excuse me, by time bridges you mean time travel, as we say. In this case, the future Earth humans are those Earthlings of the distant earthly time, who already live on Earth in the distant future, and who, through the possibility of their time travel technique with their various small and large futuristic flying machines, have been coming into earthly present since time immemorial and also into our present today.
Contact Report 662.
1945. This is where amino acids come into play, because without amino acids, there would be no life, because they are the basis of all life, not only on Earth, but in the whole universe and in all its many dimensions.
Evil in terrestrial humans arose because a very long time ago by a distant Pleiadian descendant humanity beyond. The Dern universe space-time structure many still later immigrated, very distant Pleiadian descendants were turned by manipulation into merciless warrior slaves who had to fight against foreign aggressors. Later, some genetically manipulated peoples fled and penetrated into the space-time continuum of the Dern universe and into the space-time continuum of this present. That is to say, into the area of the Milky Way galaxy, where they settled on the planets Phaeton, Malona, and Mars. In total, they were around 78 million people, of whom around 280,000 also emigrated to Earth. In addition, several thousand rebellious, genetically manipulated persons were also exposed to punishment in various places on Earth. There were also peoples who first fled from the Sirius region into the Dern continuum and were able to reach the Milky Way galaxy beyond, from which emigrants also came to Earth, on which they, like all other immigrants, divided into all the old existing groups of Earthlings. These descendants thus carried altered or compulsorily manipulated genes in them, which made them merciless fighters, criminals, which they, of course, transferred or genetically inherited at an early stage to the still primitive, wild terrestrial humans by mixing them. Thus, the evil has spread in the course of time in earthly mankind and has been passed on to the present time, which, by the way, has also occurred on other worlds in the Dern universe, and thus in your space-time structure, as well as on worlds in our own space-time structure, and has been preserved until today.
Contact Report 672.
Wow. Then we're going to Era. You can look for me here for a long time. Such a dimensional gate is simply fabulous. Just one step through, and you are 500 light years away from Earth on another world and in another dimension.
Contact Report 675.
When all the fraudulent claims, lies, and calumnies of these Earth humans became too much for you, Pleiaren, the cat was then let out of the bag and declared and officially announced that you do not come from the Seven Stars or from the Pleiades in our Dern universe, but from much further away, namely from far beyond the Pleiades, and from another space-time structure in which you call your home system Pleiaren.
Contact Report 687.
But now I want to ask my questions. The first of which relates to your daughter Simya-Se's beamship, the corrugated iron beamship or washboard beamship. Simya-Se once told me that this was her personal beamship, and that it was 300 years or so old, and that she had owned it almost all her life.
That is correct. This beamship is a personal possession of my daughter Simya-Se, and she received it from me when she turned 14, and has also been piloting it ever since. This beamship is a first model approved for interdimensional ranges in the known universe of the multiverse for youngsters. This beamship model was also equipped with special new techniques that also made it possible to reach into the past and the future, etc. However, the basic model was more than 100 years old, but it was redesigned about 400 years ago and was also approved for youngsters.
Contact Report 697.
1945. Furthermore, I must explain that the 11 years of time you will spend with me in this present plane will never be sufficient for you to learn everything so that you can be prepared for everything necessary in your life and for your great task. So we must extend the time by years, which will also be so in connection with my succession, which will take you into its care after my departure. But this can only be done by controlling and shifting Notpatah, manipulating time and using it outside the present plane in planes of the past or future, as I have already done several times with you since 1942 and have let you observe and see different countries, many significant, interesting, instructive things, and also several theaters and events of war, etc. This will naturally make you older by all the times, which will be years, but this will not have a strong effect on your body. Because in spite of your additional times in other planes of other celestial spaces, Ptah's note, Nif-Iful, other dimensions or space-time structures, you will certainly age, but you will retain your youthfulness until your old age. It will be the same if you continue your learning with those who follow me in commitment for longer or shorter periods of time outside the present plane, in planes of the past or future. But all this is inexorably necessary for you, which is why we must continue to use the times of the past and the future, for only in this way do we gain long times Notpatah, more years, enough to use for your learning. So it must be that I take you away from the present for more or less or longer times, which may be days, weeks, months, or years, during which you have strictly to learn, after which I bring you back at the same time to the same present time from which I took you away. In this way, you will not be missed by your parents and siblings, nor by anyone else, nor at school, for through the control and shifting of time, Notpatah, time manipulation, it will be that you will always be present in the present plane and at the time that prevails here. And this must be so, because the 11 years in this present plane alone would never be enough to teach you that you have to learn. You will, of course, also age by the times during which you learn outside the present time, prevailing here in this world in other time periods, but it will be that you will nevertheless remain youthful until old age.
Contact Report 698.
The various epochs and each era of the ancient history of the planet are to be reckoned in millions of years, during which the Earth foreigners came to Earth again and again, whereby, however, as Ptah has already explained to you several times, as he mentioned, we have not been able to fathom their effective origin until the present time, whereby we have, however, been able to discover that even these Earth foreigners no longer know their own prehistoric origin. Our research so far has only revealed that their prehistoric ancestors came into the Dern universe from another space-time structure, or from another dimension, unknown to us so far, and then also reached Earth and other SOL system planets.
Contact Report 703 70th Contact, Thursday, the 6th of January, 1977, 001 hours.
When Pelagon the Militant, the father of Pelagon the Marshal, seized several capital ships with the help of his combat unit and fled, the dimensional gate had already existed at that time for about 30 million years, which he used and transported with his combat unit to various inhabited solar, that is to say, planetary systems in the Dern universe, and finally also reached Earth. Many hundreds of thousands fled into open space in ships large and small and settled in another space-time structure near Beta Centaurus, which you know in your space-time structure as Barnard's star. This was not in the Dern universe space-time structure, but in the one where the Pleiaren planets also exist.
Contact Report 704 Question 7 Answer Billy. With regard to Nocodemian, the whole thing was a special case in that there was already a very high level of technical development among his peoples in his time, which enabled them to go out into the vastness of the universe and even penetrate into other dimensions. Question 13 Answer Billy. The subsequent new personalities from the Nocodemian spirit form lineage will continue to remain on Earth after the completion and termination of the sevenfold Nocodemian lineage mission. But they will leave it temporarily, because these personalities will also continue to be in contact with the Pleiaren. And this will also be the case when the Pleiaren finally return to their space-time dimension in 2029, and will no longer have any effect on Earth in any way. Contact Report 707.
So I want to ask what you Pleiaren call your space-time structure, or your dimension. I have wanted to ask this for a long time, but I have always forgotten.
Ankar universe.
Thanks. I have also learned a lot from Svath about the dimensions of our creation. Universal consciousness, which is of benefit to me today, because lately I have been asked more often about the subject of dimensions. Besides, it is not only various core group members and passive members who are playing mind games about the dimensions topic, but also scientists and other persons, whereby especially the scientists have strange ideas about parallel worlds and parallel universes. Svath, however, has never said anything to me about such a thing, which is supposed to be a mirror universe, or several, and which is supposed to be such that it would be a mirror image of our universe. Of course, scientists are not simply thinking of our present dimension, but of a differently dimensioned universe that is mirrored and aligned with our present, so that, for example, if I could go into such a parallel universe, I could meet myself there in a double version, or as a mirrored person and talk to myself, whereby my double and I would always make the same physical movements, carry out the same actions, and thus also make the same gestures, as well as speak the same words, etc. As I said, however, your father Svath never said or taught me anything in this regard, but only spoke of completely different dimensions or space-time structures or of universes, which I was also able to visit with him and experience, and also learn a lot there, as a result of which I assume that Svath was either unaware of such mirror or parallel universes or that they do not exist, which is why I want to ask you about the correctness.
Parallel universes and parallel worlds, as you described them, are unknown to us, as they are also unknown to the Sonairan. If you should also ask about their findings and knowledge in this regard, as I assume, because you always want to know everything very precisely when you bring up questions.
Yes, I wanted to, because the Sonair are still far ahead with their technology compared to yours. Since you, like the Sonair, are much more highly educated compared to the knowledge of earthly scientists, and are tremendously advanced in terms of the entire earthly technology, and therefore should also have knowledge of parallel worlds, which is not the case according to your words. I think that the whole mirror universe issue is based on pure fantasy. This also explains to me why Svath never said anything about parallel worlds and parallel universes in that sense, and also did not explain how such mirror worlds, etc., are accepted by earthly scientists. But then I do not want to hold back now and talk about what I have learned from Svath about the dimensions, that is to say, space-time structure, and I will also use the term Ankar when I talk about the Play-R and space-time structure. I feel the need to explain what I have been asked about several times recently, which is why I want to talk about it now and then hear your opinion. According to the questions put to me, it has become really necessary to explain a little further and in more detail than usual with regard to creation or creation universal consciousness, its 7 belts, planes, the material belt as well as its dimensions or space-time structures, which are also called universe universes or cosmos, cosmoi, or world space, world spaces. In order to explain the whole thing, it must first of all be made clear that in explanations, everything can never be explained as precisely as the entire facts of a matter actually require. Consequently, only just the facts that arise can be explained as well as possible, but never completely, but only just directly in relation to an arising process. This unfortunately leads to the fact that not infrequently ambiguities arise, which again and again lead to further questions that require new explanations. In addition, it is inevitable that explanations of the same topics are always presented in a different way and with different terms, etc., resulting in erroneous or apparent misunderstandings due to a lack of understanding on the part of the questioners, readers, and listeners, which then have to be laboriously cleared up. Therefore, by what I am about to explain, it should also be pointed out another time that the term creation, or creation universal consciousness, effectively means that which is the total existence of that which corresponds to infinity, boundlessness, immeasurability, or the totality of the entire far-reaching creative universal consciousness, spirit energy endless existence, or creation universal consciousness. The form of creation, as we earthlings and also the Pleiaren exist in it, is the lowest form of creation at all, and has as the only form of creation a material belt in which galaxies, nebulae and solar systems, planets and life forms, etc. exist, while already higher developed forms of creation are only of a purely spirit energy nature and develop higher and higher in order to integrate after 1049 transformations into higher and higher forms of creation and levels of evolution into the first of 7 absolute forms, into the absolute absolutum. To explain what is meant by the term creation or creation universal consciousness, the following can serve as a parable. Imaginatively, the concept of creation or creation universal consciousness can be thought of as an egg-like structure of gigantic, for human understanding immeasurable, size, which exists alongside a countless mass of other forms of creation of different states of evolution as a pure form of spirit energy in the super-ultra-infinity limitlessness, immeasurability, infinite spatiality of the so-called nothing infinity. At the Big Bang, that is to say, at the emergence, that is to say, at the becoming of creation, that is to say, creation universal consciousness, the creation structure emerged as 7 basic levels, namely in the form of 7 expanding spirit energy belts, whereby the 4th belt manifested materially through the interaction of the 3rd and 5th belt, Consequently, therefore, the material belt emerged, in which flakes, nebulae, and finally galaxies, suns, planets, and life, etc. were formed. Each material belt is the only one of its kind in each dimension or space-time structure, also called the universe, of the entire creation of universal consciousness, and each one is also expanding at an enormous speed, as are the 6 other belts planes, which are, however, each of a purely spiritual energy nature. This pure spirit energy of the 6 other belts or levels corresponds to the creative primordial substance out of ex nihilo, out of nothing, from which the first form of creation, or creation out of nothing, creatio ex nihilo, furior, created out of nothing, has emerged, through which a becoming of an existence can be generated in the first place, be it in relation to matter of any forms, or a life form with regard to life forms of all genera and species. The material belt, as the only one of its kind in the 7 dimensions or space-time structures or universes of the creation of universal consciousness, does not correspond to its own dimension or space-time structure or universe, but only the entire expanse of all 7 belts in the interior of the creation of universal consciousness together form this, and thus what is called universe, dimension, and space-time structure. Mistakenly and in complete ignorance of the effective facts concerning the structure and existence of creation universal consciousness, the human beings of Earth call the material belt the universe. The error, however, is that a material belt is only the 7th part of the total width of all 7 belts of each dimension or space-time structure within creation universal consciousness. Consequently, only all 7 belts levels together can be called the universe or dimension in space-time structure. So it must be clear that the material belt alone does not correspond to the whole vastness of the universe, but can only be seen and judged as what it really is, namely only the 7th part of the dimension universe, that is to say, of the Dern universe, that is to say, Dern space-time structure, as it is called by the Plejaren. Absolutely simultaneously with the coming into being or becoming of the creation of universal consciousness, 7 different dimensions or space-time structures arose in it. Consequently, all space-time structures or dimensions are in exactly the same space as all the others, but separated from each other as a different dimension. All dimensions are also provided with a material belt, in which galaxies, nebulae, celestial bodies, and planets, etc., are arranged differently in each space-time structure. There is the possibility for intelligent life forms to develop techniques through their high evolution and intelligence, and to penetrate the dimensions or space-time structures in a technical way, or to change from their dimension into other dimensions, and thus to travel back and forth between them. As an example, creation can be thought of as an inflatable balloon in which there are 7 other inflated balloons of exactly the same size, whereby these 7 inner balloons can be understood as 7 dimensions. The outermost balloon envelope, which represents creation or creation universal consciousness in a similar way, continues to be inflated and consequently expands further and further, as happens in the same way in its interior with the 7 further balloons. Consequently, these always inevitably remain the same size as the outer balloon envelope. These 7 inner balloons, which can be understood as 7 dimensions, thus expand equally with the outer envelope and correspond to the same outer conditions of the outer balloon envelope, which has 7 rings, which can be understood as 7 planes, whereby the 4th ring is covered with dust and can be thought of as a material belt. Creation can be thought of as an example of an egg-like spiritual energy shell, which floats in the boundless and timeless super-ultra-infinity immeasurability infinite spaciousness of the absolute nothingness, along with countless other creations of the same or, according to the state of evolution, differently higher kind. This creation structure thus contains within itself 7 different spirit energy belts, levels, or 7 different dimensions or space-time structures simile, balloons, which all arose simultaneously at the Big Bang, but are absolutely independent of each other. As a result of their simultaneous formation, they all have the same age, the same time and the same time streams, etc., but completely different galaxies, solar and planetary systems, etc., whereby these dimensions or space-time structures correspond to what the human beings of Earth call the universe, or cosmos, or world space, as well as space, cosmic space, universe, or philosophically mundus. With these terms, especially universe cosmos, the human beings of Earth erroneously call only that which is visible or tangible to them, precisely that which presents itself as a material belt, with all the material things existing in it, the galaxies, supergalaxies and hypergalaxies, solar and planetary systems, and so on. However, this does not embody creation or creation universal consciousness simile, outer balloon shell, but only one of its 7 dimensions, or one of its 7 space-time structures, and the only material belt contained therein, which exist in their 7 differently dimensioned spirit belts levels. Altogether, all 7 dimensions or 7 space-time structures are given in the extension of the entire creation. Consequently, they are also spread over the 7 basic belts planes of creation, and are thus in their size and width absolutely in the same measure as the actual creation structure. The dimension or the space-time structure in which the SOL system and the Earth float, and in which Earth humans exist, is called Dern space-time structure by the Plejaren, or Dern universe according to the Earth human sense and understanding. If living beings of any kind or species exist on any world in the material belt, then these naturally develop in various ways, whereby many factors play a part, such as instinct, etc. in the case of lower kinds and species, and intelligence, intellect, reason, and logic, etc. in the case of higher life forms, whereby the periods of time with regard to the duration of evolution, etc., are also of enormous importance. So, for example, on a life-bearing planet in a solar system of a space-time structure or dimension, living beings can be more or less evolved than on another planet in the same space-time structure, or in another dimension of the same creation, such as, for example, in the Ankar space-time structure, or in the Ankar dimension in which the Plejaren exist, or on other worlds in a space-time structure of a completely different creation. The Dern universe, that is to say the Dern dimension, that is to say, the Dern space-time structure is one of the 7 space-time structures given in the creation of universal consciousness, that is to say, one of the 7 dimensions in which the galaxy exists, which is called Milky Way by the Earthlings, and in which the SOL system floats in a spiral arm, in which again the Earth is arranged. The Plejaren come into this dimension, that is to say, into this Dern universe, that is to say, space-time structure through a technically created dimension gate, which has already existed for about 30 million years, from their Ankar space-time structure, that is to say from their Ankar dimension, into the Dern space-time structure, and thus also to Earth. The Plejaren exist in their Ankar space-time structure at a distance of about 500 light-years from Earth, whereby the Plejaren in their Ankar dimension, seen from the Dern material belt, that is to say seen from the Dern universe, come from a distance of about 115 light-years, 1 light-year, 461 trillion kilometers, that is to say, 9.461, 1012 kilometers, further beyond the Pleiades stars known and visible on Earth from the Ankar space-time structure. The distance from Earth to the Pleiades stars in the Dern universe is around, or an average of 400 light-years. The Plejaren is very distant descendants of their very early ancestors from the lineage of the primordial, prophet, primordial annunciator Nacademion, therefore, come from the Ankar dimension into the Dern universe, that is to say, into the Dern dimension or just into the Dern space-time structure, and thus also to Earth. This is because a large number of their early ancestors settled on the Earth planet millions of years ago, and then also died there, whereby their spirit forms are still reborn on the Earth world over many reincarnations and animate human beings, whose development the Plejaren strive for. Earth was and is the only planet in the Dern space-time structure, that is to say in the Dern universe, Re-Spe. In the Dern dimension where the Plejaren have an observing and helpful teaching effect, because all other planets and areas that were settled by the Plejaren and the most distant descendants from the line of the original prophet, that is to say original herald Nacademion, are all in the anchor universe, that is to say, in the anchor space-time structure, that is to say, in the anchor dimension. Therefore, when in conversations there was talk of Playaran emigrants settling, for example, on the planet Nissan in the Lyra systems, on Sirius planets or Centauri planets, or beyond the Sun Milky Way, on a planet called Kudra in a solar system called the Nissan system. This did not and does not refer to the Dern universe, but always to the Ankar dimension. The names of the constellation systems, which were and are named in the Dern space-time structure, only designate approximately the positions and distances, seen from Earth, to the stars and planets in the Ankar universe respectively, the Ankar dimension, where the distant descendants of the Playaran have settled. So it must be clear that in the entire Dern universe, or in the Dern space-time structure, where the Milky Way galaxy, the Sol system and the Earth with the Earth humans exist, the Playaran come and go and are active only in the Sol system and on the planet Earth, but nowhere else in the entire Dern universe. When the Playaran change dimensions or space-time structures or switch back and forth between them, then this happens on the one hand between their Ankar universe or Ankar dimension and the Dern universe or Dern dimension, or between other universe dimensions in the structure of creation universal consciousness. On the other hand, the Playaran also change into other dimensions when they travel in their Ankar universe or in the Dern universe, for example on Earth, into the dimensions of the past or future. This also makes it clear that, on the one hand, changes of dimensions or space-time structures are possible, which means that it is possible to change from one dimension of the creation of universal consciousness into another, or from one space-time structure into another, whereby 7 different dimensions or space-time structures are given by the creation of universal consciousness alone, in which it is possible to change back and forth or to change from one universe into another. In addition to this possibility, the dimensions of the past and the future are also given, into which it is possible to travel or change from the present, which lasts 2.7 seconds, into the past or future, just as it is also possible to change from the future into the past and from the past into the future. It is also worth mentioning that it is absolutely impossible to change something for the better or worse, or negative or positive in a dimension of the past, when something has already happened up to the time of the present, from which the change is made into the past. Changes can only be made in the current time of 2.7 seconds of the present, which then, as causes, determine the course of events up to the resulting effect, and thus follow the law of causality and fulfill it infallibly. A further possibility with regard to a change of dimensions or universe or space-time structure is that, if the technical possibilities are given, universal consciousness can penetrate into another creation of the same direction as universal consciousness and change back and forth in its own dimensions or space-time structure, just as in such other creations of the same direction, universal consciousness, the possibility of changing into the past and future exists. The lowest universe, that is to say the lowest creation form, is for example the Dern universe of the Milky Way, with the Sol system as well as the Earth, where earthly mankind exists, whereby the Dern universe form in the creation of universal consciousness is not the only dimension in it, because the creation in itself comprises 7 dimensions, that is to say space-time structure with 7 belts levels, of which one is the matter belt, and also has dark matter.
Contact Report 709.
Then I always have things to explain about you Playaran and the connections with you. It just never ends with my explanations that I have to give that you Playaran come from your space-time structure, Ankar universe, as you call your dimension, and that you only come to our Dern universe, and you are active there only in the Sol system, that is to say also only on Earth, but nowhere else in our entire Dern universe. Again and again I must also explain that when it is said that your peoples are also to be found with the Lyra, the Playaran, or beyond the galaxy sun or the Milky Way, etc., that this does not mean the stars and constellations in our Dern universe, but just such in your Ankar universe or Ankar space-time structure. And if celestial bodies in our space-time structure are mentioned as positions from which you can be found beyond, then it should finally be understood that this refers to your space-time structure. But unfortunately, this is misunderstood again and again. It is also misunderstood again and again that when we speak of a space-time structure and a universe, we are only talking about the fourth matter belt and one of the 7 energy belts in creation. This explains that the universe is not the creation, so consequently, the creation is not the universe. Creation itself has 7 dimensions with 7 energy belts each, of which only one belt, the fourth, exists in each dimension as a matter belt, which is called the universe by the Earthlings, whereby the Earthlings must first be laboriously made to understand that the universe they call the material belt is only the 7th part of one dimension of the 7 dimensions of creation. In this matter belt, precisely in this universe called by Earthlings, past, present, and future alone exist. This means that in the matter belts alone, past, present, and future dimensions or space-time structures are given in multiple forms and in endless numbers, while in the 7 dimensions of creation as such, as they are each arranged in the egg-shaped creation as a separate unit, there is only one single dimension or one single space-time structure. These are therefore the 7 creational dimensions which prevail in the egg-shaped creation itself, and which in turn have 7 energy belts within them, whereby one of each of the 7 energy belts has a material belt in which uncountable dimensions or space-time structures of the past, present, and future exist. Florina and Injana recently explained to me that through your electromagnetic resonance energy transmission, which you call something completely different and which also corresponds to something other than a simple, wireless energy transmission, you can even transfer energy transmissions from Earth into your space-time structure or into your dimension over practically unlimited distances.
Contact Report 710.
You Plei-Aran are involved in our Dern universe, that is to say, Dern space-time structure absolutely only on Earth in relation to Earth humans and nowhere else in the whole Dern space-time structure, and that also not in our SOL system. And when it has always been said that you were or are active beyond the Milky Way or in the Pleiades, Orion and Lyra, etc., then this always and in every case referred absolutely only to the fact that these were, so to speak, indications of places where you are at home beyond these star formations, in a certain great light-year distance in your Ankar space-time structure. This means that in our Dern space-time structure, or in our Dern universe, you have dimension gates in operation at the celestial bodies mentioned, or many light-years beyond them in world space, through which you can change back and forth between your Ankar dimension and our Dern dimension. The mentioned celestial bodies etc. in our space-time structure, such as the Pleiades, Lyra, and the celestial bodies beyond our Milky Way, thus only correspond to formations in relation to a certain direction, where you have your dimension gates far beyond them, which you use to change dimensions. So you are not located on the mentioned stars or on any alleged planets, such as the Pleiades, which at the beginning of our contacts we had at first deliberately falsely named as your home stars, in order to later be able to expose liars, deceivers, and charlatans, who allegedly or falsely, and thus untruthfully, would have contacts with you, Plei-Aran. And that this is exactly how it came to be. You knew this in advance through foresight, which is why we started the deceptive maneuver with the false place of origin Pleiades, and only named your real place of origin Era with the Plei-Aran stars in the Ankar space-time structure, when in the course of the years, various lying alleged contact persons, who claimed to be in contact with you, could be unmasked. Your general Plei-Aran technology, so also space technology and space-time bridging technology, etc., have been so highly developed for millions of years, through the help of the Sonair from the Dal universe or the Dal creation, that the Earth foreigners functioning on Earth have never been able to locate, detect, or otherwise register any flying apparatus of Plei-Aran origin, or also only any Plei-Aran activities since their existence in prehistoric times up to the present time.
Contact Report 716.
But in relation to my journeys into the past, which I was able to make together with Svath, questions always arise among group members, and that is because various people have completely wrong ideas about dimensional travel. In this way, the questions also refer to why I'm about 2 decades older than the time I have lived through since my birth in the time we call the present, the time I have lived here on Earth in this present dimension since my birth. Those Earthlings who produce conjectures for such dimensional journeys cannot understand that when traveling into the past, however, the time there for the present has already expired and passed and can therefore no longer be retrieved, but that the time of the past can be lived through again and again during a journey into the past, as often as it is entered into, is not understood. Consequently, also not that if a shorter or longer time is lived in the past, only the time in it passes and expires, but the time of the effective present is not affected. This meant that if I had the opportunity to travel with Svath to any time in the past and could remain there for a month, I would then live in that past time, that period which, seen from the present, had already passed and was over. And if, as a result of the manipulation of time, I returned to the place of my departure in the present practically at the same time, or at the most a quarter of an hour after leaving the present time, then only the short period of time had passed in the present which had just elapsed during the time of my departure until my return. But the time that I lived together with Svath in the past, even days, weeks, or months, or once even 2 years, by this time I effectively became older, because I had actually lived through it, almost 2 decades in total. And this despite the fact that in the present, from which I had dived with Svath into the dimensions of the past, only a short time had passed, and even though I had spent a long time in the past, whereas in the effective present, from which I had gone into the past, it had long since expired, passed and disappeared into the past.
Contact Report 719.
Then everything could be good in this respect, and also the long way is not to be considered, which takes only 7 minutes of our earthly time calculation, if I still remember correctly. So then there is also no great loss of time by going there and back.
You are mistaken, dear friend, because you are considering our old transport technique, but we have been using the dimensional transmission technique we received from the Sonairon for 1.5 years now. In this way, we will bring you to us in era and back to the center in a very short time, which will take no more than a total of less than 2 minutes.
What about when I leave? Because a few days ago we talked about the strangers, and you clearly said that you would not let them locate you. How is it then, if you appear here in my office or somewhere else or go away again, which would also be like this with me? Somehow, when you come and go, there is a small dimensional gate through which you can pass, and I wonder if the foreigners, you used to call them Earth foreigners, cannot detect this, because there are energies involved that are certainly detectable, or...
Of course, it is correct that energies are important, but as we know, the foreigners cannot detect them because they are of a completely different nature than all those who exist in this space-time structure and in its past and future. The energies we use correspond to far higher values and are therefore also not perceptible with any techniques from this space-time present as well as its past and future, which is also the reason why the strangers cannot locate us in any way. I am also unable to detect our present here, because we use the same kind of energy for our personal protection, to be protected against sight and to be imperceptible in every way through our physical, psychological, and consciousness-swinging waves. This energy and the use of this technique does not correspond to one of our Pleiaren achievements, but to one of the Sonair.
And how long have you been in possession of this sonaric technology, if I may ask? And an answer does not fall under your directives.
That is not so, no. The energy I referred to, its use and the protection technique were given to our early ancestors by the Sonairon some 27 million years ago, when first contact with them occurred in the Dal creation.
Correct. It does not have to be called the Dal universe. It has to be called the Dal creation, because it is a sister creation of ours.
Contact Report 721.
More than 25,000 years ago, new Pleiaran immigrants arrived on Earth with a slightly yellowish skin pigmentation and mixed with already existing earthly human forms, resulting in another human species that migrated to a large island. The original immigrants, who came from our Ankar universe more than 25,000 years ago, had created a dimensional gateway millions of light years beyond the Milky Way galaxy, and so entered the Dern universe and from there to Earth, where they settled in fertile areas that are now all part of China. And the fact that we also brought this teaching to Earth at an early time was due to the fact that our ancestors discovered a natural dimensional gate 22 million years ago by chance, which is located here in the Dern universe about 120 light years beyond the Pleiades stars known to you. The dimensional gateway was discovered because a moon from our Ankar universe that had drifted from an exploded planet entered the Dern universe through this dimensional gateway, which our ancestors investigated and then found to be Earth's satellite. One consequence of this was that over the course of millions of years, small groups of Pleiaran repeatedly migrated to Earth and also died here. And as a result of the fact that already more than 22 million years ago, parts of the peoples of our very distant ancestors reached the Dern universe of our creation, that is to say, the space-time structure in which the Earth also exists, but also the DL universe of the twin creation, the teaching of truth, teaching of the spirit, teaching of life, was also carried out and spread everywhere there.
Question from the hypothetical and theoretical perspective of a rational decision. I will go on to say that in order to explain the word value, morality, commandments can be used as parables, which fundamentally do not correspond to laws, but to recommendations and advice. Such commandments or recommendations were already interpreted by the herald Nocodemion about 9 billion years ago, not in our Dern universe, but in the Ankar universe, and thus in another space-time structure. Nocodemion laid the foundation stone for 77 million canons with the teaching of the commandments, etc., which were recorded in the teaching of the Spirit, or teaching of truth, teaching of the Spirit, teaching of life, after which the teaching was taught and spread until today through the work of heralds, who also had to fulfill prophetic and predictive tasks, on various human-inhabited planets in the Ankar universe, but also in the Dal universe of the twin creation. And since about 22 million years ago, the most distant descendants from the Nocodemion peoples from the Ankar universe came into our Dern universe and settled on Earth. The spiritual teaching, or teaching of truth, teaching of the spirit, teaching of life, was finally also brought into this space-time structure. As you know, dear friend, early ancestors of you Pleiaran emigrated to this Earth, and many of them also died here on this planet, as a result of which their forms of creation, or their spirit forms, have since reincarnated again and again on Earth in new personalities. And this is still the case today, and tomorrow as well as the day after tomorrow and in the far future, because for the earlier emigrants from the Ankar universe or space-time structure, precisely for the Pleiaran emigrants at that time, it was determined that their distant and most distant descendants should be taught until far into the future with regard to the teaching of truth, teaching of the energy of creation, teaching of life.
Contact Report 723.
This new herald, so the prediction reads, will not appear in our reality, but in another reality that is foreign to our space-time structure, and will bring us Pleiaran the teachings of Nocodemion anew. This is simply because our announcement of a coming new herald from the reincarnation lineage of Nocodemion, which has been handed down since ancient times, states that he would come from another reality. With this, I now know. The dimension of the Dern universe has been called since time immemorial, but which I have actually now become aware of through your explanations, which I will also immediately announce on Era and on all our worlds.
Contact Report 724.
And the trick of the two groups, the Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharon and the Giza intelligences, was that they were only in our presence when they caused mischief, whereas they were resident in another space-time plane, and only came into our presence temporarily and unnoticed by the strangers. And as far as Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharan is concerned, as far as I know, he was never in our presence anyway, but worked on his confused believers on Earth from another space-time plane. It is also to be explained that you Playaran in your Ankar universe in the Cirrus dimension remain absolutely safe from the foreigners on the Earth, if you continue to keep to your directives, which prescribe that you do not make any contact with foreign peoples and inhabitants of other planets, etc. In this way, and you know this very well, dear friend, as all Playaran also know, you also protect yourselves from falling back into the old barbaric behavior, as it still prevailed with you more than 52,000 years ago and was marked by strife and war. And it is also worth mentioning that if the foreigners who are functioning on Earth should be able to penetrate other universes of our creation, they would first have to find out which of the 6 other universes outside ours it is that you Playaran exist in. And if they were to find that out, then the even bigger problem would be to find that dimension or space-time structure in the Cirrus dimension that is a fraction of a second out of phase with our Dern dimension space-time structure. But that corresponds to a myriad of possibilities, just as it corresponds to a myriad of possibilities to find the dimensional gate that you use every time you beam back and forth between Era and Earth.
Contact Report 727.
That he, Sfath, then brought him Pastor Zimmermann back to Emmanuel during a 2-day time journey when he was 28 years old, and was also able to speak with him via a language converter. You never told me anything about that. Just as you never told me that you had already traveled back in time twice with my father before your journey with Asket, and were able to speak with Emmanuel as well as with all the other earlier prophets.
2 million years ago, an atmospheric fire or a tremendous atmospheric explosion occurred, as could be determined by time travel. Then, 46.8 million years ago, the entire world of life forms began to change again in the course of time, as had also been the case during the preceding period as a result of climate changes. Many early and very large life forms fell victim to this change, as some time travels back to that time, and corresponding observations have shown.
Contact Report 728A. And you, Fuchsberger, in your contact reports we read that the extraterrestrials with whom you have conversations have twice eliminated trees. I would like to ask you if you could explain to us what we should understand by this. Were trees simply cut down, or were they burnt or taken away?
An elimination, and this must first be explained, does not simply mean a dissolution of an object into its constituent parts, for this would correspond to a destruction, but not to an elimination, for such an elimination means a complete dissolution of all object-related matter down to its origin. Basically, a process of elimination begins, as you and yes also some core group members have witnessed this with regard to a tree, as you say, in that a certain object must be recorded in all its details with certain recognition and recording apparatuses down to the last detail and iota. It is absolutely necessary, above all, to ascertain the age and origin and thus also the exact time of origin of the object and all its details. If you are talking about fir trees and thus conifers, as you call these tree species, Then for an elimination, a complete recognition and registration of every tiny detail, and consequently also of every single fir needle, which are fundamentally leaves, is absolutely necessary. This, however, is only possible through our highly futuristic technical apparatus and devices, which will remain unattainable for Earth humans for a long time to come, and which, in a further and different development, will also serve to count and register all conceivably possible life forms. Among other things, we will also use these technical apparatuses and devices to record and register the entire earthly human race, in such a way that we will be able to record and register everything down to a single life form up to a certain point in time. Once all the necessary data have been gathered for the elimination of an object, of which there are still more than I want to mention, as well as other necessities, which, however, I consider pointless to mention, because the earthly scientists, etc., cannot begin anything with it anyway. Because their still limited knowledge, their illogic and arrogance are not sufficient to be able to understand everything as well. And moreover, it would be irresponsible of me to give them more precise information, so I will only say the following about it. If the exact time of the origin and emergence of the object to be eliminated is known, then a time manipulation by means of a time journey to the point of origin of the object is unavoidable in order to carry out the necessary manipulations there, which become effective throughout the entire time of existence, and dissolve or eliminate the object at the fixed time of the present. In the past, or at the origin of the object, it cannot be eliminated because if something arises over time into the future, such as the growth of a tree, etc., then it cannot simply not be planted or destroyed in the past. For example, if it already exists in the future or present. What has already happened in the past or has developed into the future or present, just like a tree, can no longer be undone in the past. Therefore, an elimination in the sense mentioned must be carried out in the way I explained. But otherwise, it is possible that from the future or present, something can be brought into the past, and in the course of time develop and grow into the present or even the future, such as a tree or a technique, etc. As you experienced, for example, in the 13th century with Asket in France with a man called Jacquielli, as I know when you gave him a torch and a cattle-herding device that a fate companion from the Soviet Union had with him.
Contact Report 748.
Your real age alone should be mentioned, as well as the fact that several times in all your lifetime, whenever you were traveling for months or years in other times or in the past or in the future, you had to spend 18 days every 7 years in an hourly interrupting manner in our regeneration devices, which I will call hydrodynamic regeneration converters, according to which you visibly did not age. This was for the first time in 1944, so that from then on you always remained the same in outer appearance and visibly only aged in a normal way at those times when you were back on Earth in that place which you had left on Earth for a longer time. If later, usually after weeks, months, or years, you returned by time manipulation to the same time or hour at which you had left, then no outward aging of your body was therefore detectable. And these important and necessary 18-day procedures in the hydrodynamic regeneration converters were absolutely essential to maintain the processes of your total body mobility. This is because, naturally, due to the aging of the body as a result of loss of energy and strength, as well as due to natural aging degenerative processes, the entire bodily motility decreases. That is to say, the totality of all unconsciously controlled and executed movements of the body and all its organs, whereby the ability of all organisms and cell organelles to move is impaired, and consequently losses of the entire activity of the ability to move occur. This, however, had to be prevented in you, consequently also in your present age, which today, calculated from your birth in 1937, is in total far above the double of your present earthly lifetime of 83.12 years.
Then something else in a word about this, concerning the times of the present, future, and past, because among us earthlings the erroneous view has been circulating, especially since the 1920s, when the fundamentally first science fiction silent film Metropolis was made and publicly screened in 1927, that when one travels into the past or future, then exactly the same time runs as in the present, which, however, is completely erroneous and wrong. This assumption is false because time already existed in the past and is over, so it has no relevance to the present time. This means that if one travels from the present into the past or into the future, then the present time there runs out, which is practically as fast or as slow as the present time from which the journey into the past or future is made. The trick, however, is that everything is time-shifted, which means that if a visit is made to the past and a day is spent there, for example, this is not relevant for the present time because the past time has already expired and no longer has any influence on the present time. Consequently, it can no longer be equated in its course. Therefore, a day or year, etc., can be spent in the past, while in the present, for example, only minutes pass, etc. If, therefore, one travels into the past or into the future, then the time of that time passes there, which must be lived through as a visitor, according to the time that just prevails and is spent there, which, however, has already expired and passed in the future, but is no longer relevant for the normal present from which one travels into the past, but is just already past. So if one travels from the present into the past and lives in it for example, 1 or 2 years, then this has no influence whatsoever on the normal present time from which the journey into the past is carried out, because in the past, a time is effectively lived through that is no longer relevant for the present of the time of origin of the journey, but has long since ceased to exist. The time, however, which the traveler lives through from his future present in the past is absolutely real. Consequently, he effectively lives through it, and also ages at this time. Therefore, when the traveler returns from the past time to the present time, he is aged by the time he spent in the past. However, in order to return to the present at the time when he left it, this can only be done by manipulating time. But the fact always remains that the traveler to the past ages during his visit to the past by the amount of time he spends there, so that, if he is a grown man, his beard also sprouts accordingly, so that persons who observe him recognize that he has been away for a long time.
That is well explained, and the facial beard has also led to people recognizing that you have been absent for a longer time than just the short time you were present. I remember several such incidents, such as when you were called by my daughter Simya and you had a fresh shave, only to be taken away for 6 hours at Vihaldenstrasse 10 in Hinwil, and brought back again at 5 HRs, during which time Jacobus and Calliope were waiting in the living room for your return. And because during your official present 6-hour absence you were in reality on Era for 7 days, during which time your facial beard grew and you were unable to shave it, this 7-day beard growth was of course not overlooked by Jacobus and Calliope. Moreover, I remember that in 1961 you learned sandblasting in Bern, met your girlfriend Marga, and traveled with her through Italy, Sicily, Spain, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, and Switzerland. When, as a result of your work, you were transferred to Andir to do a certain job there, and you also took your girlfriend with you, you were taken away by Ascot, and you traveled with her for 11 months in her homeland, but then at the time of your departure you reappeared in your girlfriend's hotel room with an 11-month-old facial beard. Your friend Marga complained and got angry as a result of the assumption that you wanted to mislead her, and that you had stuck on a face beard. So she wanted to tear it off, felt betrayed by you, and your relationship deteriorated as a result. I do not need to say anything more about what happened as a result. But as for the time alone that you spent with my father Sfiath in the past from 1944 until the 1950s, in the time of the Antiquity era in the Mediterranean region, in Europe, Asia, America, South America, and Africa, it amounts to 61 years and 94 days. And these were years of learning. In addition to the years you spent with my father in the past up to 272 million years ago, as well as the years during which the two of you researched the future, which is why you also know what bad things will unfortunately still happen, about which my father Sfath obliged you to remain silent, and you should no longer make predictions, as in the 1950s, but only partial prophecies. To your and my father's often long journeys and sojourns in the past and future must be added the years that Askit and you, as well as my daughter Simyase and then Quetzal and I, have been traveling with you for long periods in the past and future.
Contact Report 750.
Often our conversations led to the conclusion that all those Earthlings who scientifically deal with the times of the past and future as would-be knowers are wrong and effectively fantasize a horrendous idle run in this respect. This is precisely because in the past, time must be lived through in the length of time at that time, whereby the human being thus ages by this already past time, while in the present time, however, from which one changes into the past, only short minutes or hours pass through a manipulation of time. Examples of this are, on the one hand, the incident in Hinwil when, in the presence of witnesses such as Jacobus and my ex, I gave myself a fresh shave and left the house around midnight, only to be on the road together with your daughter Simyase for around a week in the past, but then, through a time manipulation, returned home 5 hours later after leaving the house at 5 HRs, with a week's beard sprouting on my face. Then, on the other hand, I now come back to what has happened with regard to journeys into the past, also with regard to the thing in Andir, when my girlfriend freaked out when I, afflicted with zinc fever, was with her in the hotel, had given myself a fresh shave, and she then went out to do some shopping, whereupon your niece Askit then took me away to travel around in the past for 11 months, during which time I grew a handsome facial mustache. Askit then brought me back to the hotel room by time manipulation about half an hour after I left, after which my girlfriend then got upset because she thought I was trying to annoy her by sticking a full beard on my face, which she wanted to rip off. When she then realized that the beard was real, she went crazy, and of course couldn't understand anything anymore, because I wasn't allowed to explain anything to her either. Her mind was simply overwhelmed, which is why the danger of her going mad came up, which is why Askit intervened and erased the experience from her memory. But there were a few other similar incidents where it was noticed that after short absences, I suddenly had longer stubble on my face again. But these observations usually went off smoothly because those observing me knew what was actually going on. Well, over time, scientists also talk nonsense or fantasize nonsense, so also with regard to astronomy, because the entire astronomy science has no idea whatsoever about how and what the universe actually is. So they also do not know that everything visible from the Earth, all the stars, etc., corresponds to only 1/7 of the space-time structure universe, just as this space-time structure universe only makes up 1/7 of the entire space of creation, which has a lifespan, starting from the so-called Big Bang to the end of the final contraction, of 311 trillion Earth years. Nor do they have any idea of how the real universal and creation-related laws behave, as also in relation to the emergence and behavior of the dimensions and all the trimmings with regard to the creative, and that everything is completely different from what is assumed or claimed. And that the creation is delusionally referred to as God and God the Father, as Allah, Theos, Parameshvar, Shiva, Choda, Shen, or Kami, etc., corresponds to nothing but a pathologically insane conceit that is endlessly far from any truth.
Contact Report 758.
The rhythm of forces or bio-life rhythm of Homo sapiens sapiens in all 7 universes and all their dimensions and space-time structures has a uniform period of 23 days, whereby 11 days are exposed to a plus phase or an energy peak phase, a higher organic resilience and thus a less harmful possibility of attack. Consequently, the organism can use more active and resilient forces. The other 11 days, the biolife rhythm shows a minus phase, whereby the organic stability is more unstable for pathogens and virus attacks, etc. The whole organism also tires more quickly and becomes more susceptible to attacks that are harmful to health. Consequently, it also needs more time to recover. After 23 days, the rhythm starts again from the beginning, whereby the thought, feeling, psyche state is also included, whose period, however, lasts not only 23, but 33 days.
Contact Report 767.
With regard to the time travel technique, which, depending on the case, reaches into the ZB technique areas, and thus into a superfine technique and into areas whose calculation value I no longer remember, although I had received it explained by Svath.
Contact Report 782.
When about 25 million years ago or so, the old Pleiaren discovered the energy gate to our space-time structure and penetrated through it into this Dern universe, the explorers then also finally reached Earth.
Contact Report 788.
We Pleiaren are also only human beings, if I may say so, and we are not perfect beings, as many Earth human beings assume or believe. Even if we have a much more highly developed technology, which enables us to travel through time and space, just as we also have various other higher possibilities than Earth human beings, we are still human beings and are therefore not inserted into perfection, but are afflicted with faults and disadvantages, according to which we also have to learn, experience and learn, as this is inherent to every living being and will never end until that time when this ends through the eons of time, when our creation energy, which animates us and also develops us, one day unites with the energy of the being absolutum. In the same manner as we have to behave according to our directives towards the Earth human beings with regard to contacts, this applies equally to other human beings in our universe, as well as in foreign universes and in foreign creations. This is also the reason why we must, under all circumstances, keep a low profile in relation to the foreigners who have been present in Earth's space for a very long time and to whom we must not make ourselves known. The justifications for this are the same as are otherwise valid for other humanities of other life-bearing planets.
Contact Report 790.
Yes, the Andromedans, as you call them, but who are from our space-time continuum and come from a planet we call Zilton. But this will only be proven in the very distant future, when the evolution of human beings will also make it possible to use the technology of time travel, which will one day come into being, to explore the past as it really was. But that will still take a long time, if it ever becomes reality at all, as you have already said. But then the light of truth will illuminate much that is still in the dark today. This, if I may use your symbolic simile.
Contact Report 792.
Much I have witnessed with Svath through time travel, and found that it was completely different from what has been handed down or found out by antiquarians and assumed, claimed and presented by archaeologists. But that is not so important, because the past is not so important that it really needs to be explored, because the present and the near future are important, because everything that will happen far into the future depends on it. Also important is what has happened with regard to what is at present, or what is the actual origin of what led to what is at the present time and will result from it in the future.
Contact Report 795.
Fortunately, It is not yet possible for the Earthlings to penetrate into the other 6 universes of creation, although they suspect that these exist, but see their existence as dimensions of the future and past, and do not know that the 6 universes are their own spatialities and precisely universes of creation.
Contact Report 802.
It has been around 20 million years since our distant ancestors first came to Earth, and they kept themselves largely covered up, as did those who followed them all this time after. This has remained so to this day because it was forbidden even then, which has remained so to this day, for the Pleiaren to spread out into another universe of creation than just their own dimension. A special regulation arose very early with regard to the sister universe or the Dal universe. Consequently, 2 Pleiaren peoples were allowed to settle there, so the Sonair and those you know as the people from whom Asket originated.
Contact Report 823.
Very many of our scientists, airheads, I farewell to say, to which also various normal people belong, do not understand that the Earth, in the humanly incomprehensible infinity of our creation, which is only a 7th part of all universes of creation, is not alone inseminated and carries life, and partly also more highly intelligent life than exists on our planet, and that our creation consists of 7 universes, each with a matter belt, has not yet been grasped by all those schoolboys who want to know so much about the universe, whose effective number is 7, which in turn are arranged in dimensions of the past and the future. Also, no scientist knows that the whole universe with the 3 empty spaces in front of the matter belt itself, as well as the 3 empty spaces after it, is only 1 to 7 of the whole, which is called creation, which holds 7 different universes in itself, which, in addition to the dimension of the present, still hold innumerable dimensions of the past and the future.
Contact Report 826.
Well, what I learnt was that time is finite and does not expand infinitely, and is not of only one dimension as scientists claim. Thus, the past, present, and future are not uniquely fixed, but are changeable in themselves through a wide variety of dimensions, which means that there are an infinite number of dimensions to the past and future, while the present has only the dimension of the moment.
Contact Report 838.
In every other of the 7-dimensional continuums of creation, there are the same compositions of the forms of matter as here in our space-time continuum.
Contact Report 849.
We Pleiaren, as well as our federates as a whole, are not at home in this time structure and thus not in this universe of creation, but are displaced in space, that is to say dimension and time, in another of the 7 universes of creation. This, as well as others from our lineage, who however come from a universe that is to say dimensional structure of the twin sister creation, come here to Earth, as do we Pleiaren, because you work here with regard to the teaching that leads back to Nocodamion, and which is also taught with us, and through which our peoples became peaceful and in this process sociable with each other. But when you are no more, then we will all withdraw for good, so that after 25 million years, when our distant ancestors found the passage anomaly to this space-time continuum and came here, we will then leave this universe space, re-sp. The dimensional structure of creation. I still have to explain that our appearance here was based on the prediction that our distant ancestors saw more than 25 million years ago that in the future the teaching of Nocodemion would be spread on this planet Earth, which is why also already at that time the anomaly of the passage from our universe into this one was used to move here.
There are many things being done wrongly here on Earth, also concerning the so-called important space technology, which is based on rocket propulsion research. With that, precisely with rocket propulsion, the heads only get into Earth orbit, but not out into space, which begins very far outside the solar system. Moreover, earthly research is still very far from what is needed to fly through space, and also not with anti-gravity propulsion, because that is of no use in space either, because there is nothing there that anti-gravity could repel. The fact that the foreigners do not whiz around in earthly airspace with anti-gravity propulsion, but does not make sense to those who should actually think a little further than those who do not understand anything at all about locomotion technology in airspace and in the void of space.
Contact Report 860.
The creation contains within itself 7 universes, each of which has a different present dimension, whereby each of these universes has its own material belt, that is to say, cosmos. Even the infinitely many creations that float in the nothingness space of the nihilo, which is inconceivable to the human beings, as also the Dal sister universe of our universe, like ours of the same kind, have a cosmos, that is to say, material belt that is constantly changing and also inexorably expanding. However, all higher and more developed forms of creation, which will also be our creation one day, still have 7 universes with 7 levels, that is to say, dimensions each, but no longer a material belt, but special levels of development.
Contact Report 861.
We Pleiaren have nothing to do with UFOs or other phenomena, as well as with those that come from other dimensions of this Dern universe, and effectively do not come from our Ankar universe. We are also aware that the foreigners have no idea or knowledge of the fact that creation contains 7 universes, each of which has 1,000 different dimensions, which can also be visited and traveled to by means of certain techniques, and can therefore be changed from one dimension to another. So we have the comprehensive certainty that the foreigners know nothing about our Ankar universe, as that creation contains and exhibits 7 independent universes in itself, which are differently dimensioned than the innumerable dimensions of this Dern universe.